Now, here is your host, Brannon Howse.
And good evening. Welcome to the broadcast on this May 15th, 2025. Joining me tonight is a great group of guests that are going to include Patrick Wood. He is not dead. The rumor is circulating Patrick Wood is dead. He died a few years ago. We're going to have Patrick Wood here tonight. We're going to talk about $600 billion from Saudi Arabia, among other countries, $20 billion just for AI and AI infrastructure and energy infrastructure in the U.S. Did you ever think that the Arab nations would be so big into bringing about world government? How about this? Is Donald Trump trying to stop the economic collapse of America? Is he going to back our currency with hard assets, land, minerals, hard assets? Is he going around the world building relationships to bring in income? But also, is he preparing to reset the dollar in a way that, well, most people don't see this coming for what it's going to be? We're going to get into a fascinating conversation tonight with Patrick Wood. In 2011, I had a radio show, and I talked about backing the American dollar with land, an American currency, a North American currency backed by land. Mexico, America, Canada. Is Donald Trump trying to do this? Is that what he's talking about? Canada is a 51st state and all their hydroelectricity and minerals and all they got? Why would Donald Trump do this? Is he seeing the imminent collapse of the dollar if we keep going with our trillions, 37 trillion, not to mention the off-record debt, putting us at about 200 trillion? Let's talk about that tonight. As we move toward, clearly we're going toward a digital currency. The question is, how will it work? What will it look like? We're going to deal with that tonight with Patrick Wood. And then I'm going to be joined by David Pine. Let's see what David Pine thinks about the Gulf tour and all that's been going on with President Trump and his goal to avert war with Iran. And what's going on with Zelensky and Putin. Apparently, Putin doesn't want to show up unless Trump shows up for the meeting. And Zelensky's like, if Putin's not going to be there, I'm not going to be there. So Marco Rubio runs to the meeting, flies in. But who's he negotiating with? How is this all going to get worked out? But Donald Trump's working to avoid several things: the collapse of the U.S. dollar and going to world war. How does David Pine think he's doing? And then we're going to have with us Karen Kingston. We have breaking news tonight. There is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to tell the FDA why you believe the COVID shots must be pulled off the market. We're going to show you how you can actually put in your comment on this. And we also have tonight great news, breaking news, and that is an article by Nick Helsher. Nick Helsher, I think I got an email where Nick just put out this breaking news over at Focal Points. Yep, here it is. HHS to end COVID-19 vaccine recommendations for kids and pregnant women. Breaking news on that. And then I want to talk to Dr. Williams about the incoming Surgeon General, Casey Means. She gave a speech, epic speech, about all she never learned in medical school, what she did not learn in medical school. You got to hear this. Great conversation with Dr. Williams. We always have a good one. Hello, Dolly. You know what tomorrow is? No, it's not Friday. I know. Yeah, it is Friday. But that's not what tomorrow is. Do you know what tomorrow is? Do you know what tomorrow is? You're going to scratch me? You know what tomorrow is? Tomorrow's your birthday. You're going to be 1 year old tomorrow. 1 year old tomorrow. Are you excited about your birthday? Huh? Are you getting a present? Are you going to treat? Are you going to get a treat? Are you going to get some yogurt or some banana? or pumpkin? What are you going to eat? What are you going to eat tomorrow? Are you going to get a birthday cake to eat? You're going to be a year old. Should we have a birthday party tomorrow for your birthday here in the studio as our studio dog? What do you think? Is that a yes? That's a yes? I think we should. A year old tomorrow. Our studio dog, Dolly. All right. Yep. You're pretty excited about it. I can tell. All right. That's our lineup tonight. It's a pretty good lineup. Don't you think? You're going to drink out of my water back here off the desk. Yep. You always make a mess backstage where they can't see. Let's put that up there. All right. Yep. Don't knock everything over. Settle down. But thanks for stopping by and saying hello. Oh, there you are on that side too. So there you go. Going to be a great lineup tonight. Now, before we get to our first guest, who is not dead, Patrick Wood, he's not dead. Make sure you go here, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. I give Dolly a half a scoop of Gatatana every day. She gets a half a scoop on her food. I take a scoop in water. 1 scoop's the equivalent of 90 billion plant cells. Protein, and we all need protein. We also have the amino acids, the trace minerals. It's all in there. There are 5 clinical trials behind this, folks. This is not a joke. You can read all about it, find out about how it can help your pet as well. I take this every day. You know I take it every day. You hear me talking about it. You know I take it every day. And then we also have all the other products I take every day, like my Bella Grace, each and every day. Okay, these are our sponsors. It's a great way to support us and your health. We take all of these. We don't promote stuff that we don't believe in, that we don't take ourselves. And you guys know I'm a big, huge fan of all these products because they work. And so many of you say, if I didn't have this, I don't know what I'd do because it fixed my problem. Well, I don't have my cracked and bleeding hands anymore because my leaky gut got fixed because collagen, high-end collagen where the peptides cut short, my body can actually absorb it and my gut lining is made with collagen, they tell me. So it stopped the leaky gut, which was causing my hands to crack and bleed because it was giving me a skin problem. And then I haven't taken a Pepsid since December of 2023. And then it's got not only the collagen, but the astaxanthin, which crosses the brain-blood barrier, which takes on the free radicals. It's got the anti-inflammation in there, the cat's claw. It's got 80 clinical trials. This is the real deal, folks. This is the real deal. So you got your Gatatana, you got your Bella Grace. You know I do the Numi every day. That's loaded with glutathione to detox our cells. And there's toxins everywhere. Tonight, you're going to hear a clip from the incoming Surgeon General. She's been nominated. She is talking about all the plastics, all the toxins that are in our food that you cannot really avoid in many ways. In the air that we breathe. It's everywhere. So you need, I think, to detox your cells. This is loaded with glutathione, which does that. In fact, studies show it can help remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. So check all this out, will you? Water, so important for your good health. Sleep, water, good food, exercise, water. And you know the toxins in the water, right? And this is a great water purifier. I saw a couple orders come in for this today. This is the water filter I have under my kitchen sink. This is the water I drink every day. This is what we make my hot tea with. This is what we make my coffee with. This is the water I feed Dolly or let her drink, offer to her. I guess she doesn't eat it. This is the water she drinks. Now, if you want to drink arsenic and bacteria and pesticides and toxins, have at it. But if you don't, you need a really good water filter. Worldviewwater.net, worldviewwater.net. These are all our sponsors at worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. All right? All right, joining me now is a dead man. I've never interviewed a dead man before, but tonight I am. But there is a broadcast outlet today, an individual, a friend of mine, who says that Patrick Wood is deceased. Here we go.
But I want to bring an extraordinary book. I want to go back to the beginning and why this is so, why Trump's trip is so important, and why guys like Ignatius and Mike Allen's actions are saying, hey, he's doing things in the Middle East that have never been done. I want to go back to the beginning. Ed Luce joins us, editor and columnist at the Financial Times of London. Ed, you've written this book, which is stunning, and I recommend it to people to put your politics aside if you want to see how the system works and how it kind of worked at the beginning of the rise of really the National Security Council and great power politics. This new, and I think the definitive biography on Dr. Brzezinski is out. Ed, I want to go back because one of the court, and we're huge fans of Brzezinski over Kissinger for a long time. We had a guy, Patrick Wood, who passed away a couple of years ago, and he was this theoretician about this concept called technocracy. And he would always go back to one of Brzezinski's books, I think written in the 70s, I think it was right after he became a national security advisor, or just right before, either right before or right after, where talked about the drive of the future to a technocratic superstate, saying that this is what the Soviet Union could come to. But this, the National Security Council, and particularly these two Shakespearean figures, a German, Henry Kissinger, and a Pole.
Well, there you go. I've never interviewed a dead man. Dead man walking, Patrick Wood. What have you? Well, I know you actually have reached out to Steve Bannon, and in good humor, you said you actually sent him this picture tonight. Is that right?
I did.
And, what did you texted him and said what? What'd you say? I'm alive?
I said, yeah, here I am. And at this point, he's ghosting me.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, you can't make this up.
Okay, so why does he think you're dead, Patrick?
How do you ghost a ghost?
How do you ghost a ghost? I don't know. That's a very good question. Why does he think you're dead?
I have no clue. He knows full well that I'm not dead, but who knows? I'm hoping that he will correct the error quickly, because I do not want to be dead, especially on his program. Many of his listeners know who I am. In fact, one listener was listening. Even he said that. He sent me a text. Holy mackerel, you're dead. No, I said, well, I'm not dead. Honestly, I'm here.
You're here. Well, you had a little health crisis a couple years ago, but you got over it, and you've spoken at our Worldview Weekend, and you're traveling, and you're doing your own TV show. You're very much alive.
Exactly. And it's not like I'm doing, 5 interviews at least a week somewhere on the internet. And I've written lots of articles along the way. I mean, my name is everywhere at this point, as far as technocracy is concerned. But apparently I did make
or Patrick, come clean. You are really a robot that's been built with transhumanism and technocracy to look and sound like Patrick Wood. Is that what's really going on?
Do you remember Max Headroom?
Yes, I do. Logan has no idea what we're talking about. Logan, you have to look that up. Do you remember that? You don't know.
I think he does.
He has no clue. A lot of our people have no idea. We should play that real quick. How do you spell that? The last name, remember?
H-E-A-D.
Here, I found it. Yeah, here it is.
Headroom.
All right.
Yeah.
Here he is, Logan. Here he is, for those who don't know.
What you want to do
Of
is
course, we're
save
going to see
hundreds
an
from living in
ad
mutual
first, for
custom.
Pete's sake. Hang on. I skipped the ad. Here we go, Logan. Here it is. It's a compilation. Here we go. Enjoy.
This is Max Headroom. And what you're about to witness is one of the most sinister-sounding intros to a trailer to one of the greatest epics ever produced in the history of television. And there's more, because you are going to see it as well.
Yes, it.
Yes, it. Yes, namely, the Max Headroom story.
That was, I don't even know how that got started in the 80s. Do you remember, Patrick? What was the deal?
I don't remember, but that was a hilarious thing. It was a parody of the future, I think.
A parody of the future. I actually have to look that up, Max Headroom, to see how that got started. It was a fictional character, it says here. Okay, because now you got my curiosity. Fictional character played by actor Matt Frewer, advertised as the first computer-generated TV presenter. Max was known for his biting commentary on a variety of topical issues, arrogant wit, stuttering, and pitch-shifting voice. The character was created by George Stone, Annabelle Jankel, and Rocky Morton. Max was advertised as a computer-generated, and some believed this, but he was actually actor Fuhrer wearing prosthetic makeup, contact lenses, and a plastic molded suit, and sitting in front of a blue screen. Harsh lighting and other editing and recording effects heightened the illusion of a CGI character, according to his creators. Max's personality was meant to be a satirical exaggeration of the worst tendencies of television hosts in the 80s who wanted to appeal to youth culture, yet were not part of it. Well, there you go. Yeah.
There you go.
That was a big part of pop culture. Well, you're here, you're real, you're not a robot, you're not CGI. You are the real Patrick Wood. All right. Well, let's talk. What's that?
I'm so glad.
I am too. We're blessed. And he's on our network twice a week with Logan House as co-host. All right, here we go. Fact sheet. President Donald J. Trump secures historic $600 billion investment commitment in Saudi Arabia. $20 billion, Patrick, in AI data centers and energy infrastructure in the United States. What do you make of all this, Patrick? And Sam Altman of OpenAI and Elon Musk traveling with him. What do you make of all of it?
Oh, totally. All of the technocrats from administration were there with him, like Elon Musk, Larry Ellison, David Sachs, Sam Altman, Howard Lutnick, Reid Hoffman, Peter Thiel, Alex Karp, Larry Fink was there too. All these people were there to ink this deal. And I think this is the big picture deal of the century, probably. I listened to your show last night with Annie Cyrus. That was a very interesting show for sure. She's up on stuff for sure, and she doesn't pull any punches.
True.
But the picture, the image of Trump giving credence to this leader of Syria now, that really aggravated a lot of people for sure. But that wasn't the big story here. The big story is this almost $1 billion or $1 trillion deal that they pulled out to basically to fleece all of the Arabs over there, especially Saudi Arabs. And, you know, who can make a deal like that except Donald Trump? So this was basically a plea of the technocrats to give us money, give us money, give us money, and lots of it. And the 60 billion was not, that was infrastructure is one thing. But if you look at all of the things they talked about in that whitehouse.gov release, you'll see virtually all of it is related one way or another to AI.
All of it's related to AI.
Well, not quite, but almost.
So where do you think, where do you think this is all going when you have the Summit for World Government? Remember the Summit for World Government? And,
yes.
And the woman sitting there, Pam Grom or whatever her name was, saying that we're headed toward everything being blockchain and digital. Wasn't that conference being held in the United Arab Emirates?
It was probably, well, that wasn't the same place, but you're right. It was in the UAE.
What was her name? Do you remember?
Pippa Malmgren.
Pippa Malmgren.
Pippa, Pippa, Malmgren. Malgrem, I think.
Okay, let's see if I can find that clip again. Because she was sitting there on that, Logan, help me if you can find it, will ya? She was sitting there at that summit, and that was in the United Arab Emirates, and it was called the World Government Summit, was it not?
Yes, it was.
So clearly, some of these Arab states are going to play a big deal in bringing about world government, which is something that, I don't know, did you think about that in the 70s and 80s, that the Arab nations would be so involved in bringing world government? We were thinking more probably Europe, right? Eurocentric?
Yes, exactly. You're exactly right. there was no thought of that the Arab nations at that point were other than savages. You know, they wanted to kill everybody, and including themselves. They wanted to burn everything down when something happens in the world that they don't like. We figured these people are just crazy. They will never amount to anything. Well, the joke is on us now. And it's interesting that they've staked their claim, in particular, in world government and in fintech, that is financial technology. That's the whole business of cryptocurrencies, digitizing of everything in the world. And thus, they have a very keen interest in AI that will make it all happen. The reason that the Arab world is in love with cryptocurrency is it's not a debt-based system. It's not based, in other words, it's not based on lending money, because Sharia law does not allow the use of interest in making loan payments. It's forbidden.
We dealt with that last night with Dave Gobbets, and he says they got Sharia finance to build these houses, and you can get a loan to buy in Epic, he said, and zero interest, because that's Sharia finance. Zero interest, no interest. We're losing Patrick. Let's go to this clip while you guys fix Patrick real quick. Here it is from the World Government Summit in 2022 that I was referencing a while ago. Listen to this.
A world order is always the financial system. I was very privileged. My father was an advisor to Nixon when they came off the gold standard in '71. And so I was brought up with a kind of inside view of how very important the financial structure is to absolutely everything else. And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new accounting is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money. But also, this new money will be sovereign in nature. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The US is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well. And the question is, will that new system of digital money and digital accounting accommodate the competing needs of the citizens of all these locations so that every human being has a chance to have a better life? Because that's the only measure of whether a world order really serves.
Okay, so she's saying, Patrick, that you got China, the government of America's on board. So all these governments can have their own cryptocurrency. The question is, how will they all work together? But there she is. I think that's in the United Arab Emirates, World Government Summit 2022. So again, the point we're making is you got all this $600 billion coming from Saudi Arabia. 20 billion is going to go to AI and infrastructure, energy infrastructure in the U.S. What is their long game, you think?
By AI.
Say that one more time, I'm sorry?
The takeover of society and people in our country by AI.
So are you saying that just as China wants to rule the world, and they have social credit scores, and you jaywalked, you get a ticket, the money comes out of your bank account almost instantly. You're hiring, firing, job promotions, ability to travel, get on a plane, get on a train, all is based on that. Okay, that's the tyranny of communism. Are you saying that Islam, and we know that Islam wants world domination. I don't care what the people tell you that, it's a kinder, gentler Islam. And, no, Islam is Islam. If you read the Quran, you read the Hadiths, they want global dominion, right? They want to have everybody, and they want peace after you surrender to Islam, right? There'll be peace once you surrender. And they're going to be able to tax, a jizya onto the kafirs. So you can see where Islam's just like communism, Islam could say, we could dominate and control people if we run the system. Is there a competing are they competing? Is there a competition between the communist, the Islamist, America's corporate fascist system? How many groups are competing to use this system? Like that song from the 80s, everybody wants to rule the world. How many groups are competing to do this?
I was just going to say that was Tears for Fears. That song, everybody wants to rule the world. I walked in a shoe store the other day, and it was this song played on the loudspeakers in the shoe store. I couldn't believe it. Everybody wants to rule the world, indeed. But I also say, my favorite saying is technocrats flock together like birds of a feather flock together. And so technocrats in China have an eminent respect for technocrats in the United States and Europe and the Saudis as well and the Arab world. It doesn't matter where technocrats are, they seem to flock together. That's why we see all these people, the technocrats with Trump and Riyadh, all of them. This is like a picture, a photo op at this point for all of these people. Why would they all flock together on this? I don't think they traveled on Air Force One, by the way, but somehow they got there. Maybe they're in their own private planes. But the picture to me is really clear. Wherever you see the action taking place, you'll see these technocrats flocking to it. Doesn't matter if it's China or the Mideast or Europe.
There's going to be a big BRICS conference coming up this July. Let me bring up the article. Here it is, over at the Post and email. Mm-hmm. A new world order? ? The BRICS summit could change everything this July. This was written today or yesterday. This July, leaders from across the globe will converge on Rio de Janeiro for what may be the most consequential BRICS summit today. Just a reminder, we have new people joining us all the time. That's an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, to come together under a new banking system that we've been talking about, I think, since 2010, if you go back in our vault. And their goal is really to bring down the American dollar. And, again, one of the ways for globalism is economics, right? There's religion, economics, and then government. And government and economics often go together. Now we've got like 32 nations that want to be a part of this. And I find it interesting that they're going to meet in Rio de Janeiro because that's where the Earth Summit was held, I think it was either 92 or 93, I think 92. The Earth 92. Summit in Rio in 92, where you have Maurice Strong, who was with the UN. And they implemented Agenda 21, which is called Agenda 2030, which basically is globalism, socialism, end of private property, universal health care, socialized medicine, abortion on demand, active euthanasia, population control. I mean, on and on and on, right? Tracking. I think goal 16.9 is all of us get a digit. All of us are tracked. Isn't it interesting that they're going to hold this thing in Rio de Janeiro where they held the Earth Summit in 1992? The article goes on to state that, and with a growing list of countries formally applying for BRICS and even more expressing interest, it's clear the world is no longer content to revolve around Washington, Brussels, or London. This isn't a mild evolution in global trade. It's a geopolitical pivot with teeth. The current trajectory of BRICS threatens to accelerate the decline of U.S. financial influence, fragment the post-World War II order, and undermine the dollar's position as the backbone of global trade. What do you make of this?
Well, it's an interesting article, and I understand exactly where they're coming from. They'd like to take a shot at the dollar and a shot at the grief that we've given them as a country over the years. But I'll tell you what, I'm not saying this because I love Trump necessarily, but you watch Trump at this point, because I think he's going to pull a rabbit out of the hat that's going to shock the world completely.
And what do you think that'll be?
Well, Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of the Commerce, he has said on public TV that if they can just get their hands on all the assets of the United States, like 630 million acres the government owns at this point, if they can digitize that whole mass of resources, you have the gold, the oil, the timber, the food, all the stuff that goes with the land. If you can digitize that and put it online, you can make money off of it. I see, and when I see this drive in the Trump administration right now to immediately create a cryptocurrency system, to do this digitizing, to make it actually come to pass, that means potentially that all of a sudden the U.S. is going to be sitting on some $500 trillion of assets represented by digital currency. This would be huge. This would knock everybody out of the ballpark at that point. And I think this is on their mind at this point, because you remember the Trump signed an executive order on day one and day two forbidding the Federal Reserve from issuing CBCDs. That stumped me at the time. I didn't know what do you make of that? You know, they're taking on the Federal Reserve, really? Well, that's what happened, nevertheless. So you have to figure they're impatient for some reason to get the system up so they can beat everybody to the punch, and they can bring this whole asset base that the United States has on its balance sheet, if you will, to offset not only our national debt, but also everything else that Trump would want to spend money on in the future.
Okay, so when I interviewed Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama and D.C. last week, and U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, both of those guys are self-made. Both of those guys, I think, are pretty well off financially. Both of those guys impress me as being not for sale because they don't have to be. I'm not saying that if they didn't have their own financial wherewithal, they would be of less character to be, bought. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying what impressed me about what they said and knowing about their background. You're dealing with two guys that went out in various fields, made their income, made their money, and they're independent guys. They're patriotic, old school, independent guys. They earned it the hard way, right? One in sports and one in business. And not that there isn't a business concept of sports, there is. But both those guys seem very much against the deep state and talked about it. And they talked about what Donald Trump is doing with tariffs, and what Donald Trump's doing is basically he's trying to restore America and the Constitution. And reading between the lines, what I gathered is, yes, one of them said, what he's doing is risky. But if you want to deal with this debt problem and you want to take on the deep state, you've got to defund the deep state. Well, if you want to defund the deep state, you're going to have to deal with the Federal Reserve and the progressive income tax system that they've been using since 1913, I think is their personal piggy bank, right?
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, exactly.
So what Donald Trump in one essence is doing is he's a lot like John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy and Joe Kennedy, his dad, didn't fit in with the elite. They looked down on them, didn't they? We all know that, right? And Joe Kennedy, I guess, cut a deal with whoever he cut a deal with in Chicago to help his son win, and all the history about ballots and whatnot. And John Kennedy seemed to be kind of going against the deep state, the war machine, all of that. He warned about secret societies, right? Donald Trump seems to be very similar. Andrew Jackson of my home state of Tennessee was very much like that, did away with a central bank and got censured for it. They tried to kill Andrew Jackson a couple times. He ended up beating one of the guys whose gun misfired, I think twice, with a cane. His guards had to pull him off the man. Andrew Jackson was no man to Old Hickory. He was a great warrior, battleman, horseman. I see a lot of similarities in some of these three presidents. I wonder if Donald Trump, and these guys are the ones that tried throwing him in jail. I think these are the guys that have tried to destroy his business. I think this is the institution and group that's tried to have him murdered on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania. One has to wonder if Donald Trump isn't out to destroy the deep state, and he's chosen to make alliances with people he normally wouldn't maybe do that with to accomplish an ultimate goal and destroy this system that has come after him, who is the representative, he said, of a movement. What do you say about that?
I think that's that will hold water, actually, because the issue is not that the old is being destroyed. It really is. That's obvious at this point. The question is, what will replace that? In other words, what will the new system look like? I would propose it's going to look like technocracy. That's debatable, I'm sure. But the old is being swept away at this point. Imagine if you were a guy. Let me just interrupt there.
The Fed Now. Remember the Fed Now? And everybody was going to have a Fed Now wallet. We did a lot of shows. The executive orders by Biden. We're all going to have a Fed Now wallet, and the Fed's going to take over, and your banks will basically become, paper pushers for the Federal Reserve. What Trump is doing seems to be destroying that. He's doing executive orders, no central bank digital currency. He seems to be neutering the Federal Reserve. He wants a different Federal Reserve chairman. And he's going to set up a system that is not Fed Now, not Fed-centered. He seems to be setting up a whole different system. It still may be digital, tokenized, token-based, but it is not going to empower the Federal Reserve. Am I right?
Well, I think it's more complicated than that, because the payment system like Fed Now, that was just a payment system. That was just a way to move money from here to there. They've pretty much iced that whole system at this point. It works, and it can transfer money just lickety-split. But the issue here is not income, but the assets that we have to create wealth in the first place. All of our real estate at this, but the federal government owns, they shouldn't own it, but they do. And so this is valued at, according to Lutnick, $500 trillion.
So if you have 37 trillion debt on your books, not counting your off-record, unfunded liabilities, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, et cetera.
Yes.
Who cares about 37 trillion if you have 600 trillion in assets?
Yes,
right?
Exactly. This is a fair thing. On just to think about it for a minute. You have, as a balance sheet, not forget income. Income is another issue. You make money, maybe you don't, but if you have income, that's another separate issue. But if you have a balance sheet and you're a company, or even you as a person, you have liabilities on one side, then you have your assets on the other side, right? That everybody understands that. If your assets don't outweigh your liabilities, you're technically bankrupt at that point. And so at this point, nobody has ever considered the national debt versus the assets that we have as a country. All of those assets held by the federal government, by the way, it's not constitutional. It should not have happened in the first place, but it did. And so they have it right now on their balance sheet. Well, Trump is intending to bring that balance sheet forward. In other words, market to market, and say, hey guys, we have 35 trillion in debt, but we have $500 billion in assets on our books. Now, what do you think about that? BRICS countries, they won't have a chance at that point. And I think that this BRICS meeting probably is going to fall flat, my guess.
Now, that would mean, though, that this new system would really do an end run around the Federal Reserve, right, Patrick?
Yes, it would. But remember, you have the assets on one hand that generates income, but the payments that are made from income mostly, that's where the Fed is going to come in probably at some point. So it hasn't been destroyed, but it'll have a place. But the reason for Trump to hurry up and get all of his crypto guys to get this system in place is so they can digitize our massive assets on our balance sheet.
So let me put it this way. Donald Trump is stepped on the USS Liberty. That's America.
Yes.
We're the USS Liberty. He stepped on board and we're sinking. We're taking on massive water.
Mm-hmm.
And he is trying to kick the bilge pumps in, drain the water, bring the ship back up fully from submerging anymore. But we're on the way down, and he's on an emergency mission to boost us back up. Is that what he's doing? He's on borrowed time, right?
Yes.
Now,
exactly.
Now, I want to go to my radio show from 2011. This is the great thing about our vault. June 10th, 2011. 2011. Here's what I talked about. Is it possible that a regional currency for North America could be backed by land? Could this help explain why the federal government is taking land from many states and federalizing hundreds of square miles? I should have said thousands. I started pontificating in 2011 that the federal government would start grabbing our land and assets to back the dollar.
Yes.
That was in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason I came up with that idea was I was just thinking common sense. If your dollar is a fiat currency and it's not worth anything, well, why not? What's a hard asset? Land, houses, cattle, gold, silver. That's what's considered wealth in the Bible. Cattle, land, houses, gold, silver. So why not back your currency with hard assets and say, oh, what do you mean we're broke? So I said, if I were in charge of the government, I would start backing my currency with hard assets of America. Is this why the federal government's doing it? And I was pontificating under the idea of a North American Union, which is, again, is why I wonder if Donald Trump's talking about Mexico as the 51st state. So in 2011, you'll notice I specifically said a regional currency for North America.
Yes.
2011.
Yeah.
Now, that's what Donald Trump seems to be doing.
Exactly. It is, yeah.
I mean, it's what I would do if I were in charge, and that's what I was pontificating back then, because I'm thinking, how do you take a sinking ship with a fiat currency and give it backing with hard assets? I didn't know the word tokenization back then, but I knew the concept of my currency is going to be backed by my hard asset, or hard assets, plural.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, then I'm going to take it a step further. God puts it in the hearts of men to take that back, start over. Men have in their hearts to do certain things, right? Joseph's brothers had it in their heart because of jealousy, because Joseph's dad had loved him and gave him the coat of many colors, and he seemed to be the favorite son, right? And in the heart of Joseph's brothers was this, for them, it was a sin of jealousy, right? Yes. And so they throw him in a pit and they sell him into slavery. Years later, his brothers come to Egypt to buy grain, and they realize this is their brother. And they begin to cry, and they begin to weep and mourn. And Joseph says, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Pharaoh had it in his heart to do what he did, right? And sometimes I think God just steps back and lets man do what is in man's heart naturally. God is not the author of evil. He's not the author of sin. I don't care what the hyper-Calvinist tells you. The Bible makes this clear. But sometimes God steps back and lets man do what's in his heart. Now, what if what's in Donald Trump's heart is not sin to do this, but it's how can I save America from financial collapse? So God allows a man to come to power who has in his heart the idea of business. Donald Trump was upside down, right? His daughter tells the story of seeing a homeless man on the street in front of Trump Tower and says that guy there is $9 billion richer than I am, or whatever it was, a huge number. And his daughter's like, what? Because that's how much debt he was in. He was upside down, like you were talking, right? But Donald Trump because of his bankers, I think, came along and worked a deal because they had reasons for everybody to survive. Him, the bankers, everybody had a reason to get through this. And his hard assets soared in value, largely due to inflation. It could be demand of real estate, increase in tenants, whatever. But he made it through the inflation, bringing the value of his properties up, either through demand or monetary inflation. And he started making maybe better deals or whatever. But look where he's at now, right? So maybe he's bringing that same thought process and experience with his own near bankruptcy. I think he described himself once as the king of debt. And now he's going to take this and say, well, I pulled my corporation out of the brink, from the brink. Maybe I can do this with America with hard assets like my buildings were, right? And generating cash flow. Get the Panama Canal back, make them pay it every time they come through there. Maybe build the Ben Gurion port going through Gaza. Build that, make them pay us every time they come through, along with Israel, whatever. He's trying to think of ways to generate cash flow, investment, tax revenue, lower taxes, stimulate the economy, and make this dollar backed by something. So what if God put it in Donald Trump's heart, not the sin that we saw of Joseph's brothers or the sin of Pharaoh, but the free entrepreneurial, creative, hard asset understanding of Donald Trump is in his heart. And God says, we're going to let this guy come to power. And he comes to power, and what he does is he uses what's already in his worldview to create a system, that, unbeknownst to Donald Trump, helps to start setting out what will eventually be this new economy, this new system that we read about in the Bible in the last days. Could this be what God's doing or allowing to happen?
It could be. It's plausible. Yeah, exactly.
Because if we just leave things as it is, we're going to collapse, aren't we?
It seems that way. Yeah. That's almost certainty at this point. Something's going to blow. But nevertheless, you know that Trump has an eyeball on the BRICS nations. He said publicly that he's going to teach them a lesson, not to mess with us.
He has said that publicly.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's not like
So if you had to say, what is he going to do? What is he going to do to the BRICS system?
Well, look, the system of the BRICS nations, the only beef they have is that the United States has had hegemony over finances in the world, and they're sick of it. And we're exporting our debt everywhere around the world, and they're sick of that. And they basically think we're all a bunch of moral reprobates. We're all not that way, but some of us certainly are. And so their criticism is valid. But when you consider all of the things that they have, like all the gold in South Africa and all the other assets in Brazil, that's a rich nation for sure. You take all those resources and add them all up, it's going to pale in comparison to the $500 trillion plus that Trump could to muster to say, hey guys, here's our piggy bank now. We've just leveled the playing field. And what are you going to do about that? Well, nobody's going to do anything about it at all. In Brazil, for instance, in South Africa as well, they have not nationalized all the real estate in the country. The country itself, the government, is not rich per se. It's basically it's trading money. They get income off of taxes, and they pay out expenses out of that taxes. Well, they don't have any wealth as a nation. The government doesn't have that kind of wealth itself. You add them all up, and it's a pittance compared to what we have in the United States. That's all I'm saying here. So if Trump can successfully get our balance sheet in order, where we have 35 trillion in debts over here and 500 trillion in assets over here, all of a sudden we're King Kong at that point, right?
And if your dollar is backed or your digital currency is
Yes.
backed by hard assets, people aren't going to be afraid of holding dollars.
That's exactly right.
Who wants to hold paper dollars that are worth nothing, backed by nothing? But if you're holding dollars now backed by hard assets,
Well,
now that's a game
exactly.
changer.
But remember, Pippa Malmgren said it's going to be digital. I think that's a certain statement at this point. It's going to go digital, and probably that means it's going to wipe out digital, or cash money. The greenbacks and cash. So we know there's going to be somewhere along the way the whole system has to be converted, because you can't digitize the land using dollars. Dollars are the physical things that we put in our wallet, right? There's no way to digitize that. It can't. So you have to have a digital currency in order to digitize it and make use of it.
But does that mean, Patrick, that you're going to have various cryptocurrencies involved in this system? Because President Trump went and spoke at this cryptocurrency conference, and he seems to be big into cryptocurrencies. And I mean, why could you not have multiple cryptocurrencies that are used on this market of exchange, just like you have stocks holding wealth and being exchanged? Why couldn't you have cryptocurrencies that go through a process to get into the system, just like stocks have to go through a process? Or, not everybody holds the same credit card. You're using a credit card and swiping it, but maybe it's a U.S. Bank credit card. Maybe it's a Wells Fargo. Maybe it's a SunTrust or Truist. Maybe it's a Bank of America. If you have multiple credit cards, why can't you, and you have multiple stocks, multiple mutual funds, why couldn't you have multiple cryptos that have to meet certain criteria to trade in that arena? Because Trump seems to be really encouraging cryptocurrencies.
Yes, he is. Absolutely, positively. And he's had, I think, more than 2 conferences, high-level conferences on crypto already in Washington, D.C. So, this is really on his mind to do this. But the issuing crypto, the one that digitizes everything in the first place, there has to be a centralized place for that to happen.
Right.
Some crypto has to be declared. This is it, guys. This is our official stable coin, whatever they call it. Maybe Ethereum. Maybe they're just going to make something out of thin air. But once things get digitized into this centralized currency, then at that point it doesn't really matter where it goes. Yes, it probably will diffuse into other cryptocurrencies around the world. But basically, the government will still own themselves the bulk of that $500 trillion.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the cover of The Economist magazine, 1988?
Oh, yes, I do.
Get ready for world currency, The Economist, 1988. And it was this, look at what it said on there. This is 1988, but it had on there 2018. You can see the date right in the center of the coin, right in the bottom of the coin, 2018. Yeah. And it's a currency, a pile of burning world currencies. And they were going to go to a world currency. I guess they were shooting for it, according to the article, by 2018. I can't remember what they were going to call it, but they had a name for it in the article.
It was called Bancor.
That's right.
One of them was, I think it was Bancor.
This has been around, but the technology now is made. I mean, the technology of 1988 wasn't here.
Exactly.
It wasn't there then, but it is now. Yes. Wow. Well, these are indeed interesting times. Let me show you something else tonight. Very troubling. Donald Trump Jr. Just James Comey casually calling for my dad to be murdered. This is who the Dem media worships. Demented. 86-47. That's what he's got in the sand here. Now, for those who think this isn't real, someone has actually taken a screenshot. What they say is actually James Comey's Instagram page where that is. This is all over social media tonight. And people are saying this is legit. I haven't been to James Comey's site, but I'm guessing it must be legit if Donald Trump Jr. these other people are putting out, and Laura Logan and others, and they're all saying it's legit. I mean, why does the deep state hate Donald Trump so much, particularly when we see him doing the things he's doing now? I mean, you even had a Democrat from Silicon Valley area saying, hey, I want to pass legislation that takes Donald Trump's lowering prescription drugs into law, into legislation. So even some Democrats are now cheering him. But the deep state just, no matter what he does, they hate his guts. What is at the core of that?
They're being pushed out. The threat of being pushed out is too much to bear.
So at the end of the day, it comes down to power.
Exactly. The old guard, whoever they are, we can probably name him to some extent, but we can say that they're scared for their life because they're being displaced.
Wow.
Period.
Technocracy.news. Let me show you his website here. Technocracy.news. Technocracy.news. There it is. We had Yahoo up, but there's Technocracy now. Technocracy.news. Very much alive tonight. The rumors of my demise are greatly over-exaggerated, says Patrick Wood. Right, Patrick?
Indeed. Indeed.
Let me know if Steve Bannon gets back to you, acknowledges, but he may think he's, talking to a ghost. He's getting text from a ghost.
I hope he doesn't jump to that conclusion, but somewhere along the way, I'm going to run into him and say, "Oh, Steve, I'm so glad to see you. Come over to my side. I'll make you dead. Come over on my side."
I think you should be on his show tomorrow is what I think. I think you should say, come on to my show tomorrow. Let's have a good laugh about this. That's what we've done. That's what we've done. But we're very much glad you're alive and that you're publishing over at technocracy.news. And Logan and you continue to crank out Technocracy News twice a week, 6 p.m. Central, Tuesdays and Thursdays, right here at Worldview Tube. Thank you for your great analysis and all the trends you've been tracking and warning about for so many decades.
My pleasure.
Patrick Wood checking in tonight, folks. All right, take a look at this, folks. Look at that. What a lineup for the fall conference. October 3rd and 4th, here in Collierville, Tennessee, which was voted Collierville, Tennessee, and the town next door, Germantown, the two safest towns in the state of Tennessee. You can drive in. All the hotels are on the website you should stay at in Collierville. This is where we live, folks. This theater only has 350 seats. I think they're all going to be full, don't you? This fall, you might want to get your seats now. If you really want to go, Gordon Chang, Alex Newman, Sidney Powell. She's going to talk about lawfare. She's going to talk about the election, the fall, the midterms. Where are we going with midterms? Where are we going with making sure they don't keep stealing elections? We don't have people cheating on elections. How are we going to have election integrity? She's got plenty of things she can talk about from her background as a federal prosecutor and all that. Dr. Lana talking about the Make America Healthy Again and why all these people benefit from us all being sick as dogs, right? Gordon Chang can talk about Iran, China, what's going on with Taiwan by then, the Philippines. He has so much he can talk about. The BRICS banking system, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Hadia, who was on with me last night, former Muslim turned Christian, national security expert. Who knows what we'll be talking about with her by then, right? So much happening so fast. She, by the way, will be also the keynote speaker with a different topic for our Thursday night, October 2nd banquet. That's optional. If you want to join us for that, you can do that. One of Melissa and I's favorite restaurants here in the Mid-South. I couldn't believe they had a banquet hall when I found out about a month and a half ago. I was like, you're kidding me. I said to my wife, I'd love for our banquet to be here because their food's amazing. I wonder if they have a banquet hall. Been eating there for years, never knew they had a banquet hall. Went down the hall to see what those rooms were, and sure enough, opens up a banquet hall. I was like, praise the Lord. This is like where we go here and eat all the time. You'll see why. Thursday Night Banquet, you can get that at worldviewstore.com. Dr. Andy Woods will be speaking. He'll do a new talk on all this going on and how so much of this fits in with Bible prophecy. Chris Martinson's going to talk about where we're going with our economy, the digital, AI, and so much more. Mark Mitchell, the last guy there to the right, with Rasmussen, is going to do a big survey on America's worldview. What do Americans think? What's the worldview of Americans? He's going to do a bunch of polling and then present it to us. It's our 22nd annual Christian Worldview Conference. Again, we only have seating for 350 people. Now, if you cannot make it, we will let you live stream it if you're a member of the Vault. And you can live stream it at worldviewtube.com/vault if you're a member of the Vault. Okay? But we'd love to have you here with us in person. We've already sold around 100 seats, I'm told. So we got 250 seats left. Worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. If you cannot make it, maybe your health is such or whatever, your finances are such, you can still stream it live at as a Vault member, worldviewtube.com/vault. But I hope you'll come join us in person. There'll be a lot of opportunities to visit with these speakers, get your picture with them, buy a book, have them sign a book. With only 350 people there, you're going to have plenty of opportunity to go up and visit with these speakers. Okay? Please consider doing that, getting registered. Worldviewstore.com. Joining me now is David Pine. He's got a brand new article out. Russia's Victory Day military parade showcases unprecedented solidarity of the Sino-Russian military alliance. Also, if you go over to worldviewreport.com, airlines are getting ready for nuclear war. Are they ready for an EMP or nuclear war? We'll get to that. And what does David think about the big trip, the big Gulf tour by President Donald Trump? He joins us for his thoughts and analysis of all these things and more. David, welcome back. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks. Hey, Brandon, thanks for having me on.
All right, let's start off right away with the Gulf tour. What did you make of President Trump's tour so far?
Well, I think it was an overall success. He certainly seemed to get some good agreements with Qatar and Saudi Arabia to increase investment in the U.S. by around 1.8 trillion is what the administration's claiming. He also, probably the best thing that happened out of the trip was that he kind of attacked the neocons and kind of distanced himself from neocons and all the foolish wars they've started and, basically destroying nations instead of building nations. And he really articulated an America First policy in the Middle East along those lines. I thought it was a little bit ironic that he praised, I think it's al-Shura, used to be al-Jilani, the Syrian acting president, basically a terrorist hunter leader who's, kind of got lipstick on a pig with, a record of having fought for al-Qaeda and ISIS as a leader, killing Americans, even captured by the Americans in 2005, I believe, in Iraq. And, now he's appearing, with President Trump, French President Macron. He's doing a kind of a tour, a victory tour, I guess. And the Trump administration decided to lift all sanctions on Syria, which Democrats are praising him for. Usually not a good sign. If Democrats are praising a Republican for something, it's usually a mistake. So it's not that I have a problem with so much for dropping the sanctions. I think that he's kind of a murderous thug, this new Syrian leader that's, former al-Nusra, killing Christians, killing, Kurds. So I think that's probably a mistake. And then he made some interesting comments about Gaza, talked about making Gaza a freedom zone, again, essentially implying that the U.S. Plans to seize control of Gaza once it's been cleansed of all Hamas fighters. And a recent Israeli article that was published shows that there's actually a lot more Hamas fighters that are in the field fighting the Israelis than there were when the war started. So that's likely many years away, if ever.
Wow.
Probably never going to happen.
Here's that clip of Trump at the Saudi Arabia and U.S. Investment Forum taking on the neocons. Listen to this.
The transformations have been unbelievably remarkable. Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that. And it's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done. In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves. They told you how to do it, but they had no idea how to do it themselves. Peace, prosperity, and progress ultimately came not from a radical rejection of your heritage, but rather from embracing your national traditions and embracing that same heritage that you love so dearly.
Wow. So that's the clip you're talking about, right, David?
It is, yeah. That was one of his best speeches, certainly in terms of substance and in terms of America First patriotism and foreign policy direction. But it's such an interesting thing that he made those comments, and yet he currently has a neocon in the person of Secretary of State and Interim National Security Director Marco Rubio, kind of in charge of U.S. foreign policy, and that's going pretty badly, I think, in the Russia-Ukraine front. But it shows that when President Trump, pushes back against the neocons in firing Waltz and having him demoted to UN ambassador from his previous post as national security advisor over his collusion with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, that he can actually get some good things accomplished for America in terms of peace deals with the Houthis, even though it was essentially on their terms. It was, a ceasefire that they had offered for some time ago, and President Trump, knowing that he was going to, do this Gulf tour, he wanted to kind of throw some bones to, America's longtime Gulf allies. And I think that was a wise choice. So we'll just have to see how things pan out. But I think it was an overall positive trip that, was in the U.S. national security interests.
Let me go to a comment by President Trump aboard Air Force One related to Putin and Zelensky. Here we go.
What happens on Thursday if President Putin doesn't show up in Turkey for the talks with Ukraine? What will you do?
Well, I don't know if he's showing up. I know he would like me to be there, and that's a possibility. If we could end the war, I'd be thinking about that. Now, tomorrow, we're all booked out. You understand that? We're all set.
Will you move? He goes.
You eat tomorrow. And so we have a very full situation. Now, that doesn't mean I wouldn't do it to save a lot of lives and come back. But, I think they're thinking about something. I don't know that he would be there if I'm not there. We're going to find out. Marco's going, and Marco's been very effective.
All right, so what do you make of this between Zelensky, Putin? Putin wants Trump there. He doesn't want to meet, I guess, without Trump there?
Yeah, well, that's a whole circus that I'll address in a moment. But first, I want to say that President Trump, he stated that nothing's going to, in his words, nothing is going to happen until he himself, President Trump, meets with Russian President Putin. And he's absolutely right. I mean, that was the key all along. That was what I was saying he needed to do if he was serious about negotiating an end to the war in 24 hours or even 72 hours. That was the key, is that he just needed to meet with President Putin, maybe a 1 to 3 day summit, hammer out a peace deal that was in both the U.S. and Russia's national security interests, and then pressure Zelensky to sign it by threatening to cut off Starlink access, and the war would have been over in January. So that's a missed opportunity, but it's never too late for him to do that. Now, in terms of this whole circus that Zelensky's caused, I mean, there was so much back and forth, but basically what happened is the EU leaders and Zelensky gained up to try to give Russia an ultimatum that if they didn't implement a 30-day ceasefire by this past Monday, then there'd be hell to pay in terms of sanctions, additional sanctions. And Putin responded by saying, I'm going to offer you the same deal I've been offering since February 25th, 2022, which is we want to negotiate a permanent ceasefire or a permanent end to the war. And we'll send, our same delegation that negotiated the Istanbul Agreement, which would have ended the war on April 9th, 2022, if Zelensky had bothered to sign up for show up for the signing ceremony in Istanbul, prove we're serious about peace. And instead, Zelensky, initially said, absolutely not going unless you have a ceasefire. And then Trump said a truth social post, and then that said Zelensky should go. And then his EU sponsors told Zelensky that, hey, you should go, as kind of like this propaganda coup. We know Putin's not going to show up because there's nothing to talk about at the head of state level because both sides are so far apart. So Zelensky actually, yesterday, he had planned to not go because when he found out that Putin wasn't going to go, and then his EU allies said, no, you should go. Let's make a PR stunt out of it. And that's exactly what's happened. So the Russian delegation had some, pretty heavy hitters, but it wasn't at the ministerial level. It wasn't headed by Lavrov. It was headed by his deputy, the deputy defense secretary of Deputy Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, along with the head of the GRU, who's, I think, is an admiral, Russian admiral. And so they had 4 folks on the Russian side that were kind of sub-cabinet officials. I think Zelensky showed up in Ankara. He's not going to Istanbul, but he sent his defense minister and foreign minister. We sent Rubio, along with Witkoff, Keith Kellogg. Lindsey Graham showed up. These aren't the kind of folks that Russia would accept as U.S. negotiators if the U.S. indeed was serious about negotiating a real peace agreement. Those are
and there's Rubio getting off his Secretary of State airplane, so I don't know. I think if you want to stop the war, do you want to send guys like Rubio and Lindsey or I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think Rubio is very appropriate to send. He is our Secretary of State, regardless of his neocon leanings. Him and Witkoff are good choices. I think better choices would be someone like Tulsi Gabbard, obviously Director of National Intelligence, Vice President Vance. I think he'd be the absolute best to send as our head of delegation if we were truly serious about ending the war. Rubio is not ideal, but he is the Secretary of State. So that shows that the U.S. is serious.
Well, let's not forget, this is who we're negotiating with.
Yeah.
Stumble! So there you go. That's who they're working with, David.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't show his video of his homoerotic dancing.
Yeah, I can't handle that one. I can't handle that. We've showed that one once, and I'm still trying to recover from it.
Yeah, that might be a little scandalous, but the person we're dealing with is professional comedian and really an actor.
Exactly.
unfortunately, he's since become a brutal dictator.
Yep.
He wasn't that way before the war. He was certainly
Well,
authoritarian.
war is very profitable, as he's found out, because now he's worth like $1 billion with 15 homes or something.
It's true. Yeah, he's pushing billionaire oligarch status.
I mean, I know some people think I'm being facetious, but really, he's almost worth like $1 billion now.
Yeah. He's. We know that he's been embezzling hundreds of millions of U.S. funds. We don't know exactly how much, but I estimate that all of Ukraine's officials have embezzled probably around 1.2 to 1.5 billion.
Well, that's what we're reading, that he's almost a billionaire. I mean, I don't know, I haven't seen his books, but that's what I read in publications. How about this one? Russia's Victory Day military parade showcases unprecedented solidarity of the Sino-Russian military alliance. Tell me about that. That's a brand new article, but 2 days ago by you.
Yeah, it was just on Friday that Russia held a Victory Day parade, really of the scale we haven't seen since the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was reminiscent of the 75th anniversary of the CCP, not the Communist Chinese Party, but rather the People's Republic of China. They had a parade a few years ago in Beijing, but it was a parade that had 27 heads of state in attendance, including, of course, Xi Jinping, as was shown pictured with sitting next to Putin on his right side, along with troops from 13 different countries, including China, a military delegation consisting of top North Korean military officials with 5 generals, including 2 3-star generals, one of which is in charge of North Korea's Special Operations Forces, which is the largest special forces group in the entire world. So it was pretty impressive. About a division's worth of troops marched with multiple armored columns of T-90 tanks, YARS, mobile ICBMs, nuclear ICBMs. Very impressive. But it showcased the fact that Russia is much stronger now than it was before the war. Despite the way the West portrays or has attempted to isolate Russia. In fact, Russia is much stronger economically and militarily, with a military that has is slated to have more active duty troops in the United States by the end of the year. This from a country that has 43% of the population of the U.S. and probably about 54% of our per capita income and 54% of our defense spending. So it was an impressive achievement, and it really just underscores the fact that Biden's war in Ukraine has made the Sino-Russian alliance stronger and more closer than ever, which President Trump has wisely said he wants to break up. But unfortunately, the neocons have hampered him from achieving peace and really normalizing our relations with Russia, certainly in terms of trade and economic ties.
Wow. Very interesting indeed. All right, David, what do you make of this article here today? We linked it over at worldviewreport.com. Airlines prepare for nuclear war. Jets could continue to fly following an atomic blast as insurers scramble to combat escalating conflicts. I guess there was some kind of policy, a policy dating back to the 1950s, would force the grounding of all civil aircraft worldwide in the event of a singular nuclear detonation. Did you know that?
No, I wasn't previously aware of that.
Me neither. How many of these planes could keep flying if there was a nuclear explosion above the Earth 30 miles up? How many of them would fall out of the sky?
Well, 30 miles up is really the minimum level for EMP effect. So, that would be kind of a regional EMP detonation that could affect perhaps, 20-25% of U.S. territory, or perhaps several countries that are much smaller. So it really just depends on the area of effect of a nuclear blast or EMP attack. If it's localized, then, the effect would be limited to that area or region. But if it was much broader, if it was a super EMP detonation at 285 miles where North Korean and Iranian satellites are orbiting over the U.S., then that would knock out all of the airlines, both in the air and on the ground, other than, of course, hardened U.S. Nuclear triad and early warning aircraft.
Wow. What do you make of that map I'm showing now?
Yeah, I think that's an accurate map. as you can see, that 300 circle is kind of right around the sweet spot that covers all of the U.S., much of Mexico and southern Canada as well. 285 miles is what our enemies and what I'd previously calculated would be sufficient to cover all of the continental United States. So that's really, that's a huge risk. Obviously, if Trump goes to war with Iran, then that will be kind of a worst case scenario, because they likely do have 2 Super AMP satellites over the U.S., as both I and Tommy Waller, the president and CEO of the Center for Security Policy, have warned against. But Russia, China, and North Korea likely have those as well. So those are 4 countries we don't want to get into wars with. We can continue bombing the Houthis and other smaller countries, but certain countries we want to work deals with, just like Iran. So I was happy to hear that Trump said that he thinks we're getting very close to a deal with Iran. But that most likely is going to be basically a Obama era type JCPOA 2 agreement, which falls short of what Trump has been saying he wants.
But it beats war.
It beats war. I'm all for it.
Yeah, me too. dpine.substack.com. dpine.substack.com. David, as always, thank you for your great national security and historical analysis.
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Thank you. David Pine checking in, dpine.substack.com. All right, guys, before we go to our next guest, remember, I traveled to Washington, D.C. last week. I brought my own satellite phone. Where's that camera? There it is. I brought my own satellite phone. And I suggest you guys have a satellite phone as well. I, of course, have a cell phone, but if the cell towers go down, I want to make sure that I have communications. Get a satellite phone. They're free from my friend Tina at worldviewtalk.com. Free. When you sign up for one of their very reasonable monthly plans. And guess what she lets you do? Store and roll over your minutes. Store and roll over your minutes. So if you don't use your minutes, they roll over to the next month and the next month and the next month. And maybe at some point you travel somewhere where your cell coverage is bad, almost impossible, as I did last summer. I had to pull out the cell phone. I didn't have to worry about chewing up whatever minutes I had because they've been rolling over. I could talk on it all weekend with no trouble, with no concerns I'm chewing up too many minutes. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. Now, of course, they also have the solar generators at Worldview Talk. I have the Delta Echo 400. I highly recommend you use the 866 number so you get the right one for you to meet the needs you have. They're not all the same. Some are bigger than others. And depending on what you want to run, the whole house, just a refrigerator, a coffee pot, and a lamp, I don't know, whatever it is, you call them, you tell them, hey, this is how much I want to run. They're going to say, oh, well, then you only need this one. Or if you run the whole house, oh, well, you need this one. They'll show you. They'll tell you. This is a way you're getting exactly what you need. I highly recommend you talk to them. They're great people, great customer service. Tina, Dr. Williams, who's coming on tonight, that's her sister. 866-738-3224, 866-738-3224. You can check out their Faraday bags. You can check out helpful videos. They have all kinds of deals, latest deals. I'm just kind of clicking around here. Let's see what else they have. Darkbags.com, you can click that. They have the bulletproof backpacks, the Faraday clothing, this cap. Look at that. The Escape Zone EMF blocking beanie. These sell like crazy. You're like, how did he get there? I'll show you how. You go to worldviewtalk.com. We started out at worldviewtalk.com. Let me get back to where we were. Worldviewtalk.com. There we go. Worldviewtalk.com. And then from there, worldviewtalk.com, I went to, what did I go to? How did I get there, guys? I clicked on any of these items. I clicked on the solar generators. That brings me to them. And then I went up here to darkbags.com. And there they are. There's the beanies. You scroll down the page and there was the beanies, the Faraday clothing and stuff. okay? Or you can also just call them. Just call them on that number. You can order all this over the phone. Ask questions. 1-866-738-3224. These beanies are really popular for people that sit in front of a computer a lot, knock down the EMF, maybe get headaches from all this, too much 5G, whatever it might be. These have sold out, I think, a few times. 1-866-738-3224. 1-866-738-3224. worldviewtalk.com, or call and ask questions. Great customer support. Tina has a great team. 1-866-738-3224. All right, we got breaking news, folks. Nick Holscher has just put this out. HHS to end COVID-19 vaccine recommendations for kids and pregnant women. Subtitle: with over 600,000 estimated COVID shot deaths in the U.S., HHS moves to roll back CDC guidance amid mounting criminal referrals, legislative efforts, and growing calls for a complete moratorium. Joining me now is none other than Karen Kingston. Karen, this is big news, and we have another one we need to cover tonight, and this is from your Substack, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to tell the FDA why you believe the COVID shots must be pulled off the market. Is this what's about to happen automatically now?
No, not automatically. So before we go into this, which is an activity, it's an action that everyone can take. They can tell the FDA why they believe the shots need to be pulled off the market, and they can literally go down on the right side of history and make a public comment and get a record of that. And I strongly encourage people to do that. But before we get to that, as I was texting you, Nicholas Holscher just broke that HHS is going to formally announce that they are going to stop recommending the COVID-19 mRNA injections for children and pregnant women and infants. And so that's tremendous news. And I'm smiling about that. And it's interesting that just broke today, because I've been saying since RFK Jr. got into office and after he got through the Senate hearing that it was inevitable that they were going to pull them off of the childhood vaccine schedule. That is the minimum that they would have to do. But I think they're actually going to pull them off the market. So we should celebrate absolutely that they're coming off the childhood vaccine schedule. But these are indeed gene editing technologies that were designed to cause disease, disability, sterility, and sometimes death. They're deadly. And the diseases that they were designed to cause, the biopharma companies, specifically Pfizer, has pipelines of products to now treat these unique diseases. So I think they are going to be pulled off the market. And again, pulling them off the childhood vaccine schedule was just the minimum that needed to be done, but it is not the full ethical, moral, legal, and lawful thing that needs to be done. They need to be pulled off the market. And so we now have an opportunity to tell the FDA why we believe they need to be pulled off the market. And the comments go directly to the FDA.
So let's show them how to do it. If you go to
let's just do it.
If you go to KarenKingston.substack.com, let's just start at your homepage. Go there, and there's tonight at least the headlines right there. Then when you get to
the top,
Yep,
it'll always be there for the next week.
Okay, good. Then when you go down here, folks, you see that right under share, there's that red hyperlink. FDA has opened up an online form. Click on that, and then what do?
So they just fill in, there's a box there, it's 5,000 characters. And in that Substack, I explain how you can make a comment. You don't have to be a biotech analyst or a doctor, so you don't have to write a full med legal thing. You could simply write, like someone sent me their comment. They're 89-year-old male. He worked in the healthcare industry. He did not get vaccinated. And he told the FDA, although I did not get vaccinated in 2021, I was in a car with several people who were vaccinated and boosted. And after a long car ride, his lungs started bleeding because of the shedding. And he said, because I'm now being put at risk because other people are being injected with these harmful vaccines, I demand that they are taken off of the market. And then he signed his name. So you can make a comment like that. You can make a comment like, I'll be technical here, that the VAERS system was put in place to identify when vaccines cause an increased risk of harm, diseases, and death. In 2021, there was over 20,000 reported deaths. That was more than the entire 20 years in the VAERS system combined. This is enough information to compel a class 1 recall, right? And then you sign your name. Like, you could do something like that. I could literally write probably 10,000 different comments myself.
How's that one? Please pull the COVID-19 vaccines off the market due to high increase in harm and death caused by these shots, as well as tainting the blood supply.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's all you need to, that's all. And then go down, and then it says, this is for, I've clicked, this is for the government, because it's going to the federal government. It's going to the FDA.
Mm-hmm.
So it should just say federal government. Do you see it? Click there? Yeah.
Government.
Yeah. And then you can put your email address in. I recommend people do put their email address in, because then they get a confirmation number saying that your comment was received, and then you'll get a follow-up confirmation with a copy of your comment. If you don't want to put your email, you can make an anonymous comment. Now, the other thing is before you finish, can you go back a little bit?
Yep.
So people know me that I love my slides. I love my biological license applications, my phase 3 data, my patents, and so if you want to be more technical, you can actually upload. You can see right there, it says attachments.
Yeah,
you can
add a file.
You can add a file with all the references that you want to call out. And of course, that's something that I did, because I'm a Karen. So I gave them all my references when I made one of my comments. I'm making multiple comments, and then you can provide your information. It's not a lot of information. It's your first name, your last name. You don't have to. You can be anonymous. But again, this is public record. And I think I want to go down on the right side of history in the COVID-19 bio-warfare, that bio-war battle that we've been going through. I want to go on the right side of history as saying that these shots need to come off the market, because they can only cause harm and injury to adults, children, pregnant women, and infants. And so I did put my name, and then you just put your city.
You might need to opt. You can choose to opt to receive email submission tracking number.
Yeah.
Then you need to check, are you an individual, an organization, or anonymous, right?
Yeah, if you're anonymous, then if you click anonymous, you don't need to put your email or anything, but you won't get a confirmation. So, yep. And then it's not a lot of information, Brandon, that they ask for. I didn't give my phone number because I don't want that to be public record. I do have an email that's public, the patriots@myfight.com. So I use that email so I could get confirmation. And that's it.
And then I got my tracking number there.
Yep. And now you're part of the right side of history. I mean, you've always been part of the right side of history. But now you got another.
Logan, are you in the right side of history, buddy boy?
So, yeah. And so I really
you better get a form filled out, Logan.
I encourage everyone that's watching to just go to my Substack, click on that link, and make a comment, and you can read my Substack.
Well, look at that. I've already gotten a reply.
Yep. So as of last night, there was 5,722 comments have been submitted. The FDA, for some reason, has only published 60 of them, the ones that were uploaded through May 9th. I'm not sure why that is. I guess the FDA is reviewing these, and perhaps they're waiting to make certain other announcements before they make all of the comments public. Of course, they're not going to make comments that are calling for violence, use graphic language or graphic imagery. They won't make those public, of course, but I have a feeling that they're reviewing these strategically. And currently the 60 comments that are up there, because people didn't know they could make these comments. It looks like Novavax, which is the other COVID shot, it just looked like they got a bunch of their reps to promote the shots for everyone across all demographics, and for the FDA to provide approval to Novavax and to Pfizer, Moderna for babies as young as 6 months old. So the comments that are up there currently on record are disgraceful. They're not based in fact. They're based in greed and motivation by the biopharma companies. So I think it's really important for MAGA and God-fearing Christians to say, we want these shots taken off the market. This is the worst criminal biological experimentation on humanity ever. It needs to stop. And I think there's been a lot of indications just in the last 72 hours that it is going to stop, from that HHS announcement to also the FDA commissioner, Marty Makary, was at an annual FDA legal conference, federal regulation conference, and he said that next week, CBR director, Dr. Vinay Prasad, is going to be announcing and unveiling a massive new structure for the approval and authorization of vaccines specifically focused on the COVID-19 vaccines. Now, keep in mind, they claimed that there was a placebo group, but there was not a placebo group. That group was a control group that was washed out after 2 months, and they were all injected as well. And so this new study designs for vaccines that are going to probably require a placebo group may end up resulting in the final recall, class 1 recall of all the COVID-19 shots, which is something, it's late, but it is something to still acknowledge as a win. So I believe that might be coming very soon as well.
Will this go down in history as one of the most catastrophic, unscientific, irresponsible, almost genocidal things a government or governments have ever done to humans?
Yes, it is. And that's what you and I spoke about in August of 2021, actually. And what's interesting is Dr. Hatfield, who is an advisor to the administration's Strategic Preparedness Response Division, they're responsible for vaccines in case of an emergency under the current administration, under the current leadership of Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Dr. Hatfield just did an interview with a woman named Dana Pranish, I believe I'm pronouncing her name correctly, on Substack. She's check her out. I restacked it. She has like 1,000 followers. And Dr. Hatfield told us confirmed everything, Brannon, that you and I have talked about, that Dr. Peter McCullough has spoken about, Sherry Tenpenny, Nicholas Holscher, Pierre Corey, Steve Kirsch. He had said that these are gene editing technologies, that they contaminate the human genome, that the contamination of the plasmid DNA is intentional, and the design of the genetic editing spike protein is intentionally designed to cause inflammation and disease. And it's intentionally designed to do gene hopping, to actually make modifications to cells throughout our body that are somewhat unpredictable. He said that these were not vaccines. It was just a gross criminal experiment, human experiment that had happened. He talked about shedding also being real. And he said that people were not injected with vaccines. They were injected and turned their bodies into self-replicating poison factories, referring to the spike protein. And again, this is a senior advisor to the Administrative Strategic Preparedness Response Division, which is the division responsible for vaccines in case of an emergency. And he was hired by Secretary Kennedy. Just did this interview, I don't know, yesterday or 2 days ago. So people are coming, the truth is coming out now, it's just gangbusters. I mean, what I was, and you and many were blacklisted for and whatnot. I mean, even the fact that the mRNA injections contain nanotechnologies and gene editing technologies, that is now being discussed by a senior member of the current administration's HHS. I mean, remember that topic was taboo in 2021 and 2022. It was, no one could talk about it. And so now the truth is coming out, and I think it's really important. And I think as we know, the globalists, if you will, and even some of these tech billionaires, they want to move towards surveillance underneath the skin, just constant 24/7 biometric surveillance. And now the truth is coming out that the shots did indeed contain biometric surveillance technologies, right? That's coming out as well. Wow. And so I think that this is. I'm hopeful, that people are able to accept the truth, because the betrayal to the people that were manipulated and scared into taking the shots and lied to, the betrayal is so deep. I just hope that they're able to understand that it was not their fault that they were subjected to this. And I hope their response is one of righteous anger, but not in a, not to act out in a, obviously not in an angry or violent way, but to want justice, and specifically Hatfield named the culprits that I have named and you have named. He named, obviously, Anthony Fauci for deceiving and lying to the American people that these were safe and effective vaccines. CBR director, former CBER director, that's the Center for Biologics Evaluations Research, Peter Marks, who I've written a number of Substacks on. Him and his boss, former FDA Commissioner Janet Woodcock, had a mantra which was sacrificing safety in the name of science. And safety is the health and lives of adults and children. They're like, we need to sacrifice human lives in order to move science forward. That was their mantra for the last 5 years. And Dr. Macri has said, now our mantra is, gold standard science and common sense. And I like that one a lot better.
Absolutely. Folks, go here, KarenKingston.substack.com. Should have it pinned up here for a week. KarenKingston.substack.com. Click that. You'll come up there. It'll come up, once in a lifetime opportunity to tell the FDA why you believe the COVID shots must be pulled off the market. This is combined tonight with the breaking news that the HHS is to end COVID-19 vaccine recommendations for kids and pregnant women. But we need to get this off the market altogether. When you scroll down, there it is. FDA has opened an online forum. You'll do what you saw me do a while ago. Spread this around to your family and friends, will you? Once in a lifetime opportunity. As Karen said, get on the right side of history. KarenKingston.substack.com. Karen, as always, thank you for keeping our audience informed.
Oh, thank you, Brandon. It's always an honor to speak with you and your audience. And as you see, it can take as little as 2 or 3 minutes to make a comment. It's easier than making a Facebook post. So thank you for having me on. As I said, it's an honor. God bless.
Always. Look at that. Go there, folks. KarenKingston.substack.com and fill it out and ask your family and friends to do the same thing. All right, folks, before we continue, please remember we're brought to you by you, pushing it out every day. We need your support. WorldviewFoundation.com. My time slot's supposed to be an hour and a half every night. That doesn't count Worldview Report. That's 30 minutes. Worldview Radio, that's an hour every day. Washington Report, that's 30 minutes. And then Brandon House Live. I'm supposed to be on like 90 minutes. You guys notice I go 2 hours, 2.5 hours? We are working hard. We're working hard, putting out lots of content well beyond what's supposed to be my 90-minute time slot. But there's so much out here to talk about. We're working hard to bring you cutting-edge news and information. Folks, we need your support. Please consider going now to worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Please consider signing up for an automatic monthly contribution. $10 a month? $20 a month? Some of you, if you can afford to do $250, $500 a month, set up an automatic contribution. Would you please? We want to keep pushing it all out for free so that everybody can hear the truth. We need more people supporting us. We're growing. Our numbers are growing. We've got a lot of people watching us that can support us financially. They can. They have the wherewithal to do it. But for some reason, they don't. If you can't, don't worry about it. But if you can, we need your support to keep this network going, to push out all of this content. We're producing, 12 shows now, guys? 12? Yeah. Pushing it all out for free with all the different platforms. The free iOS app, Android app, Roku channel, all of it. We got a new Apple TV channel coming any day now. Had to redo some code and reload it. Giving you free distribution platforms and free content, but I got to pay for it to keep going and growing. And remember, we're adding in the new History channel. By next week, we should have the first free history program from our trip from Washington. We got many, many documentaries we're going to make from all the footage we gathered. But the first one is coming out next week. Free. Brought to you by our foundation. WorldviewFoundation.com. WorldviewFoundation.com. Thank you for doing that now. You can also use our mailing address if you prefer to support us through the mail. Or if you want to give over the phone, leave a voicemail or text Melissa there at that number. She'll gladly get back to you and help you make a contribution over the phone. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Joining me now is Dr. Bashima Williams. She's a functional medicine doctor, MD and functional medicine doctor. We have some startling clips from you for you tonight, including the nominee for Surgeon General. She said she basically didn't learn anything in medical school. Wow. And Joe Rogan, he's talking about, what are they, peptides? Is that it? What it is, Logan? We got so much to get to. She joins us each week for a medical update. Dr. Williams, welcome back. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me today, Brandon. It's always an honor to be on your show.
It's always a great conversation is what it is, so thank you. All right, so let me start out on a personal level. My wife has really bad gluten allergies. Logan has gluten allergies. He is his mother's son, no doubt about it. My wife, if she gets a hold of any gluten, starts to itch, right? Logan, if he gets a hold of gluten, also starts to itch and actually kind of gets a rash on his side. So we're running around DC last week for 8 days, and we got to always find somewhere to eat where there's gluten-free food that's good, all right? So I finally decided when I was on the road with them, why don't I just throw in with them and become gluten-free too, and then we can all just go to the same restaurants. And my wife said, look, if you get rid of gluten, I think you will feel better, and I think you're going to drop weight, because you're always talking about you want to drop 5 pounds, 7, 10 pounds, whatever. She said, I think you'll be shocked. So I did. I'm about a week in now for no gluten. Yesterday, I said to my wife, it's like my brain is now firing on all cylinders. It's like someone took a blanket that was over top of my brain and took off the blanket. And now my brain can get light and air. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it, but now I want to create, I want to build, I want to design, I want to do projects more than I ever did before, but I had to force myself to do it. I said, I feel like I'm just like, boom, boom, ready to go. I mean, it's weird. Is this, I don't know if you call it brain fog that lifted or what? What do you hear when people get off gluten?
Yeah, absolutely. Brain fog is definitely a concern a lot of our patients have, because they are concerned about, could this be the early onset of dementia?
Yes.
And that's actually what brings a lot of our patients to us. In fact, I just recently had a amazingly brilliant engineer. She was actually a NASA engineer. And we haven't even had laboratory testing done, but we cleaned up her diet. So we haven't even given her all the treatment we normally do. We've cleaned up her diet and put her on some key supplements. And she sent me a text, and I would love to read this to you guys. Every day, my husband gives thanks during our morning prayer time for how much better I am feeling. I haven't felt this good and had this much energy for at least 20 years. And Dr. Casey Means, who's the nominated for General Surgeon of the United States of America, she actually says, food is not just, it's not just fuel, it's actually information at the cellular level. So what happens when you have gluten, it's first of all, it's a processed carbohydrate in most cases. And carbohydrates, what they do is they cause insulin levels to go up, which then through a whole series of events, when you have high insulin spikes, you will actually then have some extra inflammation in your brain, which then slows everything down. Now, gluten is a common issue, but a lot of times it's gluten with sugar, like a baked good or bread, that has some other things in it that also accelerates that brain inflammation. That's what it's all about. Inflammation in the brain. Microglia inside of the brain, that's part of the immune system of the brain, gets really sticky, and literally the neurons do not fire like they're supposed to. It's almost like they're firing through molasses rather than just thin microglia.
Whoa, because that's how my brain feels. It feels like my brain is, like I said, firing now on all cylinders, right? So that's what you just described it from a medical terminology.
Nutrition is a big deal. It is information to your cells. It is not just brainless eating. It's actually information to your cells. So when you eat, for example, if you ate a piece of broccoli that has phytonutrients like sulforaphane in it, that phytonutrient will actually go into the cell. and affect transcription at the DNA level to make anti-inflammatory things inside of the cell. If you ate a candy bar, that high sugar content would actually do the opposite, and as well as toxins and other things. They will actually promote inflammation. Our first line treatment for people with joint pains and things like that is cleaning up their diet, because we know that we can reduce inflammation significantly by doing that.
Wow. Speaking of Casey Means, the nominee for Surgeon General, listen to, I want to play this and get your response. Here we go.
Think that the American healthcare system and our government agencies would be clamoring to fix metabolic health and reduce American suffering and costs, but they're not. They are deafeningly silent about metabolic dysfunction and its known causes. It's not an overstatement to say that I learned virtually nothing at Stanford Medical School about the tens of thousands of scientific papers that elucidate these root causes of why American health is plummeting and how environmental factors are causing it. For instance, in medical school, I did not learn that for each additional serving of ultra-processed food we eat, early mortality increases by 18%. This now makes up 67% of the foods our kids are eating. I took 0 nutrition courses in medical school. I didn't learn that 82% of independently funded studies show harm from processed food, while 93% of industry-sponsored studies reflect no harm. In medical school, I didn't learn that 95% of the people who created the recent USDA food guidelines for America had significant conflicts of interest with the food industry. I did not learn that 1 billion pounds of synthetic pesticides are being sprayed on our food every single year. 99% of the farmland in the United States is sprayed with synthetic pesticides, many from China and Germany. And these invisible, tasteless chemicals are strongly linked to autism, ADHD, sex hormone disruption, thyroid disease, sperm dysfunction, Alzheimer's, dementia, birth defects, cancer, obesity, liver dysfunction, female infertility, and more, all by hurting our metabolic health. I did not learn that the 8 billion tons of plastic that have been produced just in the last 100 years, plastic was only invented about 100 years ago, are being broken down into microplastics that are now filling our food, our water, and we are now even inhaling them in our air. And that very recent research from just the past couple of months tells us that now about 0.5% of our brains by weight are now plastic. I didn't learn that there are more than 80,000 toxins that have entered our food, water, air, and homes by industry, many of which are banned in Europe, and they are known to alter our gene expression, alter our microbiome composition and the lining of our gut, and disrupt our hormones. I didn't learn that heavy metals like aluminum and lead are present in our food, our baby formula, personal care products, our soil, and many of the mandated medications like vaccines, and that these metals are neurotoxic and inflammatory. I didn't learn that the average American walks a paltry 3,500 steps per day, even though we know, based on science and top journals, that simply walking 7,000 steps a day slashes by 40 to 60% our risk of Alzheimer's, dementia, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and obesity. I certainly did not learn that medical error and medications are the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States. I didn't learn that just 5 nights of sleep deprivation can induce full-blown prediabetes. I learned nothing about sleep, and we're getting about 20% less sleep on average than we were 100 years ago. I didn't learn that American children are getting less time outdoors now than a maximum security prisoner. And on average, adults spend 93% of their time indoors, even though we know from the science that separation from sunlight destroys our circadian biology, and circadian biology dictates our cellular biology. I didn't learn that professional organizations that we get our practice guideline from, like the American Diabetes Association and American Academy of Pediatrics, have taken tens of millions of dollars from Coke, Cadbury, processed food companies, and vaccine manufacturers like Moderna. I didn't learn that if we address these root causes that all lead to metabolic dysfunction and help patients change their food and lifestyle patterns with a united, strong voice, we could reverse the chronic disease crisis in America, save millions of lives and trillions of dollars in healthcare costs per year. Instead, doctors are learning that the body is 100 separate parts, and we learn how to drug, we learn how to cut, and we learn how to bill. I'll close by saying that what we are dealing with here is so much more than a physical health crisis. This is a spiritual crisis. We are choosing death over light. We are choosing death over life. We are choosing darkness over light for people and the planet, which are inextricably linked. We are choosing to erroneously believe that we are separate from nature and that we can continue to poison nature and then outsmart it. Our path out will be a renewed respect for the miracle of life and a renewed respect for nature. We can restore health to Americans rapidly with smart policy and courageous leadership. We need a return to courage.
Wow. All the things, I mean, that sounds like you. That sounds like you, it sounds like you wrote that.
Yeah, it's what I've been preaching for about 15 years. And you know what, and here's the bottom line, Brandon. When you're in medical school, you learn what you learn, and that's it. And you think that they are teaching you everything, and they're not. And then you start seeing real people in real practice not responding like the way, like these cookbook recipes in medical school taught you they should be responding. And so for me,
wait a minute, did you say cookbook medical schools?
Cookie cutter recipes of how to treat people, basically, is what we are taught. We are taught when you have high blood pressure, here are the 7 different types of blood pressure medication categories that you can choose from. Here are the ones that work for this type of person or this type of person. It's based on age, sex, ethnicity, other comorbidity risk factors, like if you're diabetic, go with this drug. If you're African American, go with this drug. If you're a white male, go with these drugs. So it's all cookie cutter. And I call it brainless medicine. I actually almost quit medicine 15 years ago because I couldn't do this anymore. I had never been a person who, since 2001, I've never given more than just 1, at most 2 injections for the pediatric patients if we were doing immunizations on them, because I didn't think their bodies could respond like they were supposed to with 5 or 6 shots all at one time. And I also use common sense in terms of like the hepatitis B shot. Why are we giving a newborn a hepatitis B shot? Those were outside the box thinking. I didn't think I was a genius, which you don't have to be a genius. You just have to listen and start exploring different options. And when I started doing that, that's when I started seeing real healing. And again, the healer's diet was my first introduction to healing, like the way sort of God wants us to heal our bodies, right? And so from there, it just kept going and going and going. I couldn't put down these books. And then I became certified through the Institute of Functional Medicine. But what we're taught in medical school too is what Dr. Casey says is that when you have a heart problem, we send you to a cardiologist, and then we send you to a kidney doctor, and then we send you to a gastroenterologist. And before you know it, you're 68 and seeing 7 different doctors, and none of them know what each other is doing. And we're practicing medicine as if those organ systems coexist without anything else. And so what we've learned in functional medicine, of course, and this is very intuitive, and everyone out there should be saying, well, yeah, of course, everything works together, is the metabolic biology, everything is interconnected. Everything affects everything else. So, and Dr. Casey I'm so excited to have someone like her at the helm of our as a Surgeon General.
Now, she was controversial for some. Some people didn't want her. Now, I think Steve Kirsch, I got to get him on. He's, I guess, changed his mind. What do you think has caused some people to say, no, I don't want her, to, yeah, no, I do want her. She's the right person for the job?
This is exactly, what happened to me in terms of just in my own little household. For example, I started doing functional medicine, and it took my husband 5 years, my husband is also a physician. It took him 5 years to finally see what I was doing was the right way of doing medicine. And he completely gave up his practice and opened up a regenerative medical practice in St. Louis because of that. And you can't do regular medicine once you know the truth.
I don't think did I know until right now, did I know that your husband was an MD too? I don't think I knew that.
Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah.
So
we met.
So you influenced him. So are you telling me he kind of thought you were maybe a little out there for a while?
100%. In fact, he started sending his complicated patients to me because, and you have to understand, Mike is, like genius level, top 10% of our medical school, just really smart. So if he couldn't figure something out, well, then, so he would send them to me and I would figure it out. And then we would get this patient to feel better and feel, like what you just said, the weight was lifted off of their bodies or their brains or whatever it is that they were being oppressed by. One of the first patients he ever sent me was a patient who was an accountant, and she was sitting in a moldy building, and it was mold. It turned out to be mold. Well, we're not taught how to treat toxins.
What were the symptoms for that?
Extreme fatigue for her. And basically the cells weren't working and making energy because mold is a neurotoxin. It's also a cellular toxin. So it actually affects how the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of your cells, the mitochondria inside of your cells is what makes energy, and the mold toxin actually affects that. And so her biggest thing was her brain wasn't working. And as an accountant, that's a really big deal. And also she was so physically tired, she couldn't walk up and down the staircase, which is where she had to go and turn in some papers on a regular basis every day. She would ask whoever was going down the staircase to take them for her. 6 months after we started working together, and this is 5 years of her suffering, 6 months after we started working together, she was so grateful that she got her life back, her energy back, her brain back, that she was actually running around the office asking if anyone wanted anything taken down the staircase. Yeah, she had the energy to do it. And that was one of Mike's patients. And he saw her for follow-up, and he's like, what are you doing? And this is where we started slowly having that dialogue. So sometimes people will change their mind based on evidence that they see. Seeing is believing in some people, whereas, so I think that's what may have happened with him.
Wow. Amazing. So is Casey, is she a functional medicine doctor now like you as well?
She's well known in the functional medicine world, yes. Mm-hmm.
So what do you think as Surgeon General she'll make her campaign? I know a lot of them have a certain big topics they go after. What will hers be?
I hope hers will be that what she just addressed, and what would be absolutely amazing for me to see is the decrease in pesticides, decrease in encouraging farmers to make bigger and more products, because that's their yield is what they get, what they get paid
by, really.
And unfortunately, that has caused them to have GMO seeds that are creating these crops that are not naturally as big as they, like a head of corn is a lot bigger than it used to be. And also there's a ton of pesticides in that stuff. So when they grind it all down, we used to live in a city where, we used to live in a small town where we had cornfields all around us. When they harvest that cornfield, all the pesticides that have been sitting on those plants for months is now all up in the air, and we're breathing it, not to mention the dust and all that other stuff that's also there. But also a lot of those pesticides are going into your food. And pesticides, I remember being like in sixth grade and watching them spraying behind our house where we had all these grasshoppers, and the grasshoppers would die. And I remember researching it back then, wondering how is that killing them? But it's not doing anything to us.
But
and
it is.
And I found out back then that it's actually a neurotoxin to the nervous system. It actually makes them the nervous system stop working. So you're not breathing anymore. So you're not getting oxygen to your tissues and all that stuff. So they literally die from a neurotoxin. And I'm like, well, why is it not killing us? Well, it's a dose dependent. But if we eat this over and over and over again, and then we're drinking it because it's running into our water supply, this is where I really hope Casey Means has a huge impact on industry standards that have become normalized, when we know for a fact that there's nothing normal about GMO seeds and pesticides. There's nothing normal about that at the cellular level. In other words, when our body sees that, our body's like, what do we do with that? So it's been a struggle really to teach about these. What they are is endocrine toxins. What we see in, what it results in our world,
website.
what I see a lot of is things like infertility, because they do disrupt the endocrine system. So they affect the ovaries, they affect the testicles, they affect sperm genesis, and women with PCOS and inflammation, weight gain, obesity. All these toxins are obesogens. And so what we focus on is really the 5 pillars of health. We teach people how to eat an anti-inflammatory diet. We also teach people how to calm their nervous system. We created a course called Your Thrive Code, and it is an amazing course that is only $297. It should be a multi-$1,000 project course, but we made it so affordable. So every single person who wants to have the A through Z knowledge of what they can start doing right away, without having to work with a functional medicine doctor like myself, because there just aren't enough of us, they can do that.
Where?
We created a course on yourthrivecode.com.
Okay.
Thrivecode.com.
Well, we need to start promoting that on a regular basis.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's everything. It's hormones, it's nutrition, it's how stress is affecting your body. So many people have no idea how stress is affecting their body. I had a lady who is going through divorce, and I knew she was really stressed out, but I had to show her that she was stressed out because she was denying it. But people live in this denial part of their life because it's a coping mechanism to get through life. And so we did some objective labs that showed how stressed out her body was.
Wow.
And so we're working through that now backwards. Now there are many people that know they're totally stressed out and would definitely want that help. But this is the world we're living in. In fact, one of Casey Means' main objectives is to decrease stress in your body. We don't, and we're talking about all of this, but I want to just be really, really clear. What I love doing is actually not talking about all this devastating stuff. I like to talk about empowering people that you can make a positive impact and positive change all by yourself, just by working on those 5 pillars: the exercise, the nutrition, the stress reduction, the sleep, and the social engagement. Social engagement, I think I might have said this before, but I'll say it again, is so important because it releases a hormone called oxytocin, which is your feel-good hormone. We don't have enough of that. And that was something that I saw really devastating with that virus in 2020. So.
Wow, isn't that interesting? I work a lot of hours, obviously, and I interact with people, obviously, but usually through a screen like we're doing. I interact with the kids in the control room, but this is all work. Not that I don't enjoy it, but it's work. But my wife will say, after we've gone out over to we have 2 couples they're old enough to be my parents, and we love being with them because they are older and they have a lot of history and they're very interested in the things we do, and we talk about topics. It's hard to find people my age, in your age, with the same age, that are interested in talking about things, right? So when we get together with them, it's just everybody's throwing information out, talking what they've learned, what's going on, this and that. And before you know it, 4 or 5 hours has passed. We take turns going to each other's home. And when we have a dinner party, we use the fine china, we use the sterling silver, we use the goblets. It's a formal dinner, right? And we all take turns, and that's maybe people in the other part of the country do it, but it's kind of a Southern thing here for those that still do it. But you go into the formal living room and you put out a nice meal with all the nice stuff that normally people get at weddings and never use. But we put on a big meal for each other. and we swap houses, right? And before we know it, 4 or 5 hours has gone by. And at the end of those evenings, my wife will say, you seem so much more relaxed, energetic, happy. You need to do this more often. Now, I didn't realize there's a medical case to be made, but you just told me there is. You're saying that one of the foundations of good health is that social interaction for your health.
That's right. That's right. It's there's something called the hormone hierarchy that rates hormones. It guides us in terms of how to help people first. And so on the bottom of the hormone hierarchy is insulin and cortisol, because if you don't have insulin or cortisol, you will die, right? Cortisol is your fight or flight hormone. It's what gets you up in the morning. Insulin, obviously, is your blood sugar regulation hormone. Without insulin, you would become, hyperglycemic and die, go into a coma and die. But right above that is oxytocin. That's how important that social hormone is. And that's how important when you give somebody a hug, you do it with intention. You do it, heart to heart if you can, heart to heart. And you do it with intention, and you do it with a sort of gratitude in your heart, and you release that happy hormone. You give somebody a compliment, like, by the way, what you're doing is amazing. I love what you're doing. And also I love your people. We sold a lot of these vitamins to a lot of your listeners. And I'll tell you what, we've had an interaction with a lot of them because they call us and ask us questions and things like that. Is this good for my husband, or, whatever. And they are the nicest people, I have to tell you, because a lot of podcasts, we do a lot of radio shows, and this is just my way of spreading the word as much as I can, a little bit at a time. And your people are super nice. But oxytocin, really important social interaction. That's why it's one of the 5 pillars. It's right there with nutrition. So if we, sometimes when somebody calls us, hey, do you want to have a luncheon, or do you want to go have, lunch or breakfast or whatever? Try to say yes if you can, and also go in there with a grateful heart, with a gratitude heart, that you're giving back to that person, not what can I get from that person, because you will leave with more at the end of the day.
The Bible says that we should not forsake the assembly of ourselves together with other believers, right? So isn't that interesting that from a medical scientific standpoint, here's the Bible saying, hey, there's benefits for you gathering together under a common purpose and function, which is believers coming together for using their various spiritual gifts for the edification of the saints, the equipping of the saints, the encouragement of the saints, and that in doing that, there's also a scientific medical benefit that comes with it. It's not just come together for the purpose of worship, which is great, that's primary, but there are side benefits for your health, because when you come together and you have fellowship and you gather around each other under this agape love that you're feeling and sharing with one another, it's also going to have a medical benefit. I've never put that together till right now, but now it makes sense that a lot of things we see in the Bible are not just commands because it's a theological. That's great. It's wonderful. That's, in right. Worship, yes. But part of worship is good health, right? And part of worship is the fellowship with other believers. But I would have never thought until this conversation to take that and say, well, no wonder there are multiple reasons to gather for Christians to gather together. And that doesn't mean you have to go to a formal service, but that means you could do what we do. The New Testament church really originally met in homes, right? They initially met in homes. There were no physical structures for about 200 years until after the resurrection. So they were meeting in homes. So here's the Bible saying, hey, as believers, as Christians, get together, fellowship, live out your spiritual gifts. Oh, and by the way, there's also scientific benefits, medical benefits. Also, the Bible talks about laughter being great for our health. So you put all this together and you start, wait a minute, now the scriptures are starting to make a more sense, even from a medical standpoint. What do you make of what I'm saying?
No, 100%. And singing and rejoicing and all of that. When people who have more oxytocin being released on a regular basis are definitely happier.
Talk to me about singing, though, because I love music.
Yeah.
Okay, I love music. And I noticed that, obviously, Saul would call in David to play his harp when he was struggling with depression, anxiety, whatever. But I think most all of us, but certainly a percentage of the audience, when they put on good music, like every day I start my day with a cup of coffee in my study with classical music.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I listen to all kinds. I listen to Andrew Bocelli. I love the Bee Gees. I like Elvis. I have a variety. But when I put on certain types of music, it changes your tone, your mood. You feel better. There's a connect. And you mentioned music, but think about when you get together and you sing. I mean, I have been with groups, leading Worldview weekends in 300 cities. And when we start off singing, everybody stand and sing with me, and a cappella, lead them, Blessed Assurance, Amazing Grace, How Great Thou Art. A whole different attitude comes over the whole room, and everybody's countenance, their face, everything. We should do a study just on the scientific benefits of certain types of music on your health.
Well, one of the things I found interesting when I started learning functional medicine is one of the things that we learned is this whole idea of the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight. That's what makes you get out of danger, high cortisol. And your parasympathetic is your relax and digest. And the majority of your parasympathetic nervous system is run by a nerve called the vagus nerve, okay? In this world most of us live in, we're fight or flight all day long. And we even eat while we're fight or flighting. Like in the middle of doing tasks, we're literally eating, or we're driving and we're eating. And so we're eating during sympathetic overrun, fight or flight, which means we are not digesting that food very well. So it just sits in our stomach. When I started learning functional medicine in terms of how do I engage that parasympathetic nervous system, which music is one way, and humming is another, singing is another, gargling is another. So the vagus nerve runs right here, right near your vocal cords. So stimulating your vocal cords stimulates the vagus nerve, which is your biggest nerve that innervates the relax and digest. That's why you feel more calm when you're singing or humming especially. Now, a lot of Christians, what do they do before they eat? They pray. They pray. They stop. They pray. What we teach, if you're stopping and praying and engaging your parasympathetic nervous system by doing that, you're going to digest your food better. And I just thought that was interesting because, if you don't pray, we teach you to do 3 deep intentional breaths, because breathing helps innervate that parasympathetic nervous system too. Just doing that and just stopping, just stop and breathe and then eat your food once you have your mind clear. And don't be thinking about 5 other things. Don't be reading a book, watching TV, or other things that distract you from the rest of, don't be doing something stressful while you're trying to eat. Just don't eat until you can resolve that stressful thing, because your body is not going to accept it the same.
Isn't that interesting? I want to go to one more clip. Here we go. Listen to, this was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. yesterday, I think.
Anybody thinks that...
Wait a minute. Do I have 2 things running, Logan? Okay.
We did gold standard medicine in this country from these institutions. Look at our children. They're the sickest children in the world. Laura, you say that Congressman DeLauro, you say that you've worked for 20 years on getting food dye out. Give me credit. I got it out in 100 days.
I'll give you that credit.
All right, so let's work together and do something that we all believe in, which is have healthy kids in our country, for God's sake.
Miss Vane.
Do that together. There's no such thing as Republican children or Democratic children. There's just kids, and we should all be concerned with them.
Wow, that's a good line. What is this, by the way? Harmless harvest. What is that?
That looks like some kind of water that was harvested. Unfortunately, I do believe it might be a plastic container. I was looking at that also. And also bottles of water in front of him that were probably provided to Congress. Get rid of your plastics. That's one of the first things you can do. Get rid of your plastics. Start improving cellular health with good anti-inflammatory foods, which we can talk about. Next week we can just focus on, something like sleep, for example. If we can maximize sleep, and I can give you all these little pearls with, the temperature in your room, You know what's an interesting fact with sleep, and we can talk about this next week, is how you can't fall asleep if your feet are cold. I don't know if your wife has ever had that problem.
Well, let's just say I like to keep the bedroom super cold, and there are times that I never turn the heat on in the bedroom all year, and our room will get down to 55 degrees, and I love it. Now, she is piled up with blankets and a heating blanket, and I'm over there with a sheet, still sweating. So I don't know what she's like. Last week I was complaining. She was complaining about being cold, and I'm like, "What are you talking about? I'm literally sweating over here." She's like, "What is wrong with you?" You know. So we're totally opposite on temperature of the room. She can put on more blankets. I'm like, I can't take off anymore. Okay, this is so. Yeah. I love a cold bedroom. I sleep really well in a cold bedroom.
Yep. And I'll tell you one more thing to help you sleep and have less of those hot flashes, if you will, and the sweat flashes, is stop eating at minimum 3 to 4 hours before bed. So the sooner you start your fast, the better, because then your blood sugars stabilize. Did you know that you don't process sugar at night like you do in the morning? So you become more insulin resistant at night because melatonin, which is your natural sleep hormone, goes up, and that creates a situation of increasing insulin resistance, so you don't bottom out your blood sugars at night. But eating at night is kind of bad for a whole bunch of reasons. But that will definitely, some people who have the hot flashes at 2 or 3 in the morning, it's because their blood sugars are crashing because they ate something with high sugar right before bed. So definitely, that's an easy solve, right? You just stop eating 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed, and all of a sudden the hot flashes, magically go away.
By the way, I saw Rob Lowe, a clip of Rob Lowe the other day, and they were Al Roker was talking about how much younger Rob Lowe. I guess they were claimed about to be the same age, and they were joking that look at how young Rob Lowe looks. Rob Lowe said, look, I got rid of the alcohol, I got rid of all that stuff in my life, and he says, and then I sleep. He said, I try to get about 9.5 hours of sleep a night.
Yep. And I'll tell you, this supplement right here, we've had
What is that? What is that?
This is the magnesium. We've had a lot of your patients use this. I've used this for over, almost 15 years. I haven't swayed from the magnesium that we put together because it works so well. It helps that brain that's like racing, at night when you're trying to go to sleep and you can't shut your brain off. It also helps calm the brain down, but without making you feel super tired. But it does help your brain shut down and improve sleep.
Let's go to these kits right here. So they're already in right here. First to me first, guys.
Magnesium is so important because 98% of my patients that I tested were deficient in magnesium. And we do the specialized testing. We don't do just like the regular blood work. We actually look at intracellular magnesium levels, which is what you should do. And 98%, close to 100% of patients were magnesium deficient. And magnesium is involved in hundreds of reactions, but one of the most important ones, it's one of the last reactions that takes place when you're making energy inside of your cells. So if most people are deficient, most people are not maximizing their energy potential. But this magnesium is really good it's really gentle on the gut, so it doesn't give you those really bad gut.
And it's a certain kind of magnesium, not just something you
it's a combination of two, one that relaxes muscles, one that I say relaxes the brain. And then also gives you the magnesium your cells need anyway, while we're at it. So
and if you get it at the average store, most of that's going to end up in your stool, and it's ridiculous. You're just wasting your money, right?
Most of my patients who come in and they're like, I tried this magnesium and I'm having diarrhea, or my stomach is upset all the time. It's got to be the right magnesium, the right combination with the right, we want it to get to the brain. And so it's got to be able to go through.
Which why your vitamins, a lot of them I notice are a capsule with a powder, so your body will digest it.
Easily digested. Everything is easily digested.
One of these kits, I know they morning and night. You got the night one obviously has that magnesium.
That's right. We put the magnesium in the nighttime one because we want people to have a good night's sleep, because that's really important.
So when we go to
some people will buy that plus a bottle of this.
Okay.
Because they also want to take it in the morning because it's kind of a calming thing to do.
Okay, so where do they find it? If we go to myvitamins.com/worldview and you go to shop.
Yeah, if you go to shop and you find individual products.
Okay, there we go. There it is, right there.
That's right.
All right, and then if you go back to the kits, right? Which
every single one of our foundational kits has the magnesium in it because it's so important. I can't stress that enough, how important magnesium
So which
is.
one of these is the one everybody should start with? This daily foundational one?
If everyone started with the daily foundationals, we're really going to make a huge, that's the daily foundationals plus immune that I recommend people take instead of the foundationals during the winter months to help support their immune system. But the foundational ones, the first 4, like the men's foundation, women's plus 50, and the college teen foundations, those are the most important supplements based on my testing that I've done for 15 years on patients who come in to optimize their health and optimize longevity and performance and things like that. This is what we found. Like, for example, many people don't know the power of the omega-3, a clean, good omega-3 that's been triple distilled, so so much of the toxins that are naturally found in fish is removed. That omega-3 is a huge anti-inflammatory thing for you to do to your body. When we reduce inflammation, which is what you did, Brandon, by getting rid of gluten, you reduced inflammation so your cells work better. So definitely, I can't implore, like, all my patients are on these basic supplements. Now, we add some, like if you have brain health concerns, or if we do genetic testing and we find that you're 40% higher risk of developing dementia, we might add some. But the basic ones that everyone should be on, the ones that a lot of my patients don't know what to take, I should be taking something, but I don't know what to take, we made it super easy for everyone to be able to take.
Go there, folks. There it is. Women's daily, men's daily, but then there's the woman's daily if you're 50 plus. So if you're not 50 plus, you could just go with the women's daily, and the men can just go with the men's daily. But if you're over 50 or over, go with the women's daily. Everyone should be on one of these first 3. That's what you're saying?
And if you have a teenager or a college kid, definitely order them that because when you go to college, your diet really is not great. Unless you're really intentional. My kids were intentional. My kids actually eat pretty good, one of them especially, but definitely a lot of kids start eating, more pizza, maybe a little alcohol, and all these processed foods that are in the school cafeteria. So a lot of my patients will order, the way it works, Brandon, in my practice is I usually see the wife, the mom, the woman, and then 6 months later, she's like, can you see my husband too? And then 6 months later, it's like, can you see my kids? And so that's usually how that works. But, it's one of those things where if we can start affecting one person, then we start to affect others. And here's the bottom line is when moms try the supplements and they feel a lot better, they want to spread the news to everyone.
It normally starts with mom. Everything. Worldview training, apologetics training, fighting the education system I started doing in 1990. Everything started with the mom. Everything. That's just
well, it certainly does in medicine, that's for sure. I definitely see a lot of men because of the women that came through the program. I will say that lady that I just quoted earlier, her and her husband pray, and he prays over her and thanks God for her ability to have more energy and all this stuff. What I also find is a lot of men start doing what their wives are doing. So it's kind of cool to be a positive, contagious person.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope people go to myvitamins.com, myvitamin, one, no S, myvitamin.com/worldview. As you can see, we vet everything we do. This is also Tina's sister, and she, we work with her with worldviewtalk.com. So again, we spent weeks talking with her, and vetting all this, understanding it, using it. And so we highly commend this to you, highly recommend this to you. And of course, many of you are calling, you're getting a subscription, and you're doing this as him or hers. You're getting your morning, vitamins, and you get your evening vitamins. And again, these are made fresh. So these are not months old. They're made when you order them. Many of them you'll see are in a capsule. So the powder is in there. So when you take it, then it dissolves quickly and into your bloodstream and into the brain versus the hard, old vitamins you're buying at the store, many of them which your body never digests anyway. So I got that right?
That's right, 100%. And not only that, but also the amount of fillers and all of that stuff. My goal in my life is to always, in everything I do, one is do good in this world, but two, over deliver but under promise. And so that's why our supplements are so successful, because people who start them don't get off of them, because they actually, you don't do something and you don't pay for something over and over and over and over again if you're not noticing a difference. And our patients actually notice a difference. So,
wow, excellent. Thank you, doctor. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. And next week we will talk about sleep.
Let's do it.
Excited. Yeah, I'm excited. All right, take care. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
You too. Check it out, folks, right there, myvitamin.com/worldview. All right, guys, that's quite the program tonight, don't you think? I think it is. Hope you enjoyed it. And don't forget, you can order 20 business cards absolutely free at worldviewstore.com. Order these. We've now sent out over 15,000 of these cards that promote Worldview Tube that you can give to your family and friends, or maybe a waiter or waitress, the person that cuts your hair, styles your hair. Maybe you go get your car washed. I don't know, someone you meet while you're riding the bus or on the subway or at church. Hey, I think you would really appreciate this network. Here's a card. What's the worst they could do? Throw it away, right? And maybe you say to them, hey, watch this network for 30 days. See if you're not better informed. Watch this network for 30 days. See if you're not better informed. Here's a card. Will you do that? Pray for us. Pray for us and promote us. Will you? Worldviewstore.com. Get your 20 pack of cards. They're free to talk about Worldview Tube. And if you run out, order up more. Order up more. Worldviewstore.com. Worldviewstore.com. Hey, folks, let's not forget about the fall conference coming up. Throw that up there one more time if you guys would. Get registered, folks. Worldviewstore.com. Worldviewstore.com. Our 22nd annual Ozarks Worldview Weekend. The banquet is on the Thursday night before, October 2nd. You'll find out details about that. Also, that's optional. Also available at worldviewstore.com. Roll the music. Let's call it a night. Another great program. I think tomorrow we're going to do a little birthday party. Ooh, my voice went. A little birthday party tomorrow, maybe. What do you think? A little birthday party for Dolly. Our studio dog, Dolly, turns 1 tomorrow. So I think we've got something prepared for her. You guys might want to tune in for that tomorrow night. Who else? Do I have anyone booked for tomorrow night? The news cycle's running so fast, I haven't been booking too many people up. Oh, I do. Tomorrow I have Ed Martin on. I better write that down. I've got Ed Martin on tomorrow night. He was slated to be the district attorney for Washington, D.C., but I guess some rhinos were afraid of Ed. Democrats and rhinos afraid of Ed. But Mr. Martin is going on over to the DOJ to be a pardon czar, and I think investigate the weaponization and maybe investigate whether these pardons by Biden were legit. That's tomorrow night right here. Thanks for watching. May God save America. Take care.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
And welcome. Glad you're with us on this May 15th, 2025. The Supreme Court is hearing a case today on birthright citizenship, something we've talked about for so many years. going really all the way back to our friend Phyllis Schlafly, who is no longer with us. But I went into worldviewtube.com today, used the search engine, and pulled up an old article by her. This is something we need to get the Supreme Court to make a decision on. And I want to play a clip or two for you, because we need to get this thing nailed down. It's been completely taken out of context by the left to swell this country with illegals and their children, and really to collapse our welfare system, thinking that now they're here, they have these children, and they're entitled to all these benefits. But of course, they just now give the illegals, the adults who just come over the border, the benefits. This is just not sustainable. But that's the goal, folks. That's the goal. President Trump tweeted out, big case today in the Supreme Court. Birthright citizenship was not meant for people taking vacations to become permanent citizens of the United States of America and bringing their families with them, all the time laughing at the suckers we are. The United States of America is the only country in the world that does this. For what reason? Nobody knows, but the drug cartels love it. We are, for the sake of being politically correct, a stupid country. In actuality, this is the exact opposite of being politically correct, and it is yet another point that leads to the dysfunction of America. Birthright citizenship is about the babies of slaves. As conclusive proof, the Civil War ended in 1865. The bill went to Congress less than a year later in 1866 and was passed shortly after that. It had nothing to do with illegal immigration for people wanting to scam our country from all parts of the world, which they have done for many years. It had to do with Civil War results and the babies of slaves, who our politicians felt correctly needed protection. Please explain this to the Supreme Court of the United States. Again, remember, the Civil War ended in 1865, and the bill goes to Congress in 1866. We didn't have people pouring into our country from all over South America and the rest of the world. It wasn't even a subject. What we had were the babies of slaves. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Good luck with this very important case. God bless the USA. President Donald Trump. Well, one thing we've learned today is that, sadly, President Trump's worst pick for the Supreme Court was Justice Amy Coney Barrett. I hate to say it, but she just seems like she has a serious attitude problem. A serious attitude problem. She seems to actually have a massive disdain for the man that appointed her. I don't know who told him to put her in there, but she has been a disaster for the Constitution. Do you want to hear a little bit of the hearings today? Before the court? The Solicitor General, David Sauer, he's the male voice you're going to hear. The female voice is that of Justice Sotomayor. Listen to this, folks.
Right now, we have multiple courts. We have novel courts who've percolated this issue and said, you're violating precedent. Not only precedent, but the plain meaning of the 14th of the Constitution.
Respectfully, I think what we have are lower courts making snap judgments on the merits that ignore the fundamental principle of the 14th Amendment, that it was about giving citizenship to the children of slaves, not to the children of illegal immigrants who really were not even a very discreet class at that time. And that's the sort of argument that deserves percolation.
There were some people in Congress who argued against the 13th Amendment just because of that. Some people who argued against passing the amendment just because of that, because it would give citizenship to gypsies.
I think the relevant history of the 14th Amendment is the statements of Senator Trumbull, who emphasized that domicile was the key criterion. He said that in a letter to Andrew Jackson, and we've cited our Ninth Circuit briefing a host of decisions that back that up.
And it got rejected repeatedly. We can go into the history of citizenship, but I still go back to...
All right. It got so bad with her talking over the Solicitor General that Judge Roberts actually had to tell her, I would like to hear the rest of his answer. So we'll monitor this, keep you posted as to where this goes. If you don't have borders, folks, you're not a country. If you don't have borders, you're not a country. And obviously, the courts have been a huge problem for this country. And this is exactly what many of our founders were worried about. They were worried about what the courts were going to do to this country, runaway courts. And here we have it. You know, there was a great exchange about the courts the other day by Newt Gingrich. I've been critical of Newt to some degree over the years. Due to his pushing of this couple, their name starts with a T, it'll come to me in a minute. But he pushed this couple that was really promoting communitarianism. And they actually said that the founding fathers were kind of old fashioned and we need to move beyond the founding fathers. And he was really pushing this couple.